Lord Russell.
Yeah.
You say that imperative almost that politics be kept out of this. But is there not a political question that is bound to arise in the minds of the statesmen? Are they not bound to ask, can you envisage a scheme of disarmament and the wiping out of nuclear weapons which would not deliver the free world into the hands of communists, as long as men can still fight with sticks and stones, people would say? Isn't the only answer world government?
Well, I'm entirely in agreement with you. I don't think prohibiting nuclear weapons in itself is the slightest good. You could prohibit them and have a universal agreement to prohibit them, and they would still be used if ever there was a war. And I don't think there's any point whatever in mere prohibition. The only thing that is any use at all is not to have a war. And as I said, suggested at the tail end of what I was saying, we can avoid war by expedience for the moment, but ultimately we must have some international authority which is able to prevent war. That is the ultimate goal. But it'll take some time to reach that goal, I think. But I do say most emphatically that merely to prohibit nuclear weapons won't get you anywhere at all.
All right, here we are. Joining me today, and Christian, is Matt Sergiou.
Hello.
Hiya, mate.
Hi, Matt.
You all right?
All right.
But when we see this, the Wheel of Death, as I've christened it.
Wheel of Death, I like that. Yeah.
Matt's drawn, I'll probably put it up now, the different sort of life cycles this wheel's had, where it's had question marks and have been rubbed out and filled in. And what started this? I'll rewind it all. I can only speak for myself because I know Matt's been into the Beatles conspiracy or the Beatles occult connections for many years. My sort of interest is really the outside history of that, but it came back round full circle with the Huxley stuff and reconnected it with the Beatles, which I never thought me and Chris would get into. Doing research on the Beatles. What did Mike Williams say? Welcome to the party or something.
No, it was quite funny. But I went. By the time Don were, I kept going on to him saying, "I'm not into Beatles, Don, but I've been listening to this guy, Mike Williams. I'd listened to Mike since he started, and then he got onto the Beatles stuff. And I was saying to Don, I'm not into Beatles, but this is interesting. And he's like, I'm not interested. And I wasn't. But I got hooked and I was listening. Then I ended up buying the book, Billy Shear's book. Took it on holiday, read it, the whole lot as well. No interest in the Beatles at all. And then eventually Dom clicked and went, fucking hell, that Beatles stuff. And then that were it. But I wasn't same as him. I wasn't interested. And I didn't.
Yeah.
In fact, weirdly, right, it's one thing where someone at work actually told me about the Paul McCartney's dead thing. I'd never heard of it. We're talking 2015, I reckon, 16. I'd never heard of it.
Well, I hadn't heard of it until you mentioned it because I wasn't interested in the Beatles.
Whatever year it was around the same time Mike Williams started doing stuff on it, and that's literally how I came across it. I had no interest in it. Never even heard the Paul is dead story. The guy at work said it to me. He said, "Oh, I don't believe in any of these conspiracies you tell me about, but I think there's something to the Paul is dead one." I'm like, "The what?" And then I watched those Flying Beetle docs on YouTube, which are still there, aren't they?
Oh, Rotten Apple.
Rotten Apple.
Yeah.
No one knows who made them either, do they? Do they know anyone?
Oh no, it's a Dutch guy, I think. It was a Dutch guy. Someone's told me he's passed away. Actually,
they're good they are though.
Yeah, a musician, I think. I don't know too much about him, but it's a Dutch guy, I think.
I think it was a bit where there's a clip in there where is it Alan Broad? Is it Ian Broadbent, that actor? Is it him?
Oh, Jim Broadbent.
Jim Broadbent, sorry.
Yeah.
Is that him who walks in and says, "Hi, Billy"? Is it him? There's a little snippet in there. That one of them, and I'm like, what? I don't know if it was him. It was some old famous actor. It might not have been him.
The one I've seen, and I'm not sure she is saying Billy because I played it over and over again, and I'm not quite sure she's saying Billy, is George Harrison's widow, Olivia Harrison. She's at an event or something, and Paul or Billy walks into the room or something, or she walks into the room, or however it happens, and she sees him, he sees her, and she walks over and she says, "Oh, hi, Billy," or something like that.
What's it like to do what? It's lovely. No, excuse me, I've got to say hello to my friends. Hello. You all right? We're going to go on there.
I don't know if I'm not. That's what people say she's saying, but is that? Are people thinking that she's saying Billy because that's already been superimplanted? It's been implanted into their consciousness.
Possibly,
because I can't quite hear it that way. I'm not.
The actor one I heard him say Billy.
Yeah.
With me, because I've got no interest in the Beatles per se, I'm more interested in the research for like the Eliots or the Ashers or whatever, and where it all leads. Bertrand Russell, things like that. Because I know that Bertrand Russell was basically the king. In fact, it's come up in some other research that I were doing for my book just today, actually.
In some way, though, in fact, sometimes an advantage if you've got no interest in them.
Yeah,
you've got no skin in the game, as you say, have you? You don't. You're indifferent to any outcome. You know what I mean? So you take any prejudice out of there, don't you?
Yeah.
See, Bertrand Russell is one of the names that appears on this wheel of death, if you like. He might not be written on each piece of the sketch that I've drawn out of this wheel of death, but he's there in the background.
Yeah, I nearly sent this over to you today, Matt, because I'd written it in my book and I obviously forgot to send it. And I don't know if you've heard of they're called the Pugwash conferences.
Yes.
And the Russell, I think we have sent stuff, haven't we? I think if I remember rightly. Anyway,
I think so. Yeah.
The Russell Einstein Manifesto for the Pugwash,
right?
issued in 1955.
Yeah. And that was it Einstein and Bertrand Russell who wrote that manifesto?
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah.
And the first conference was held at what became the Thinkers Lodge.
Okay.
Yeah, in Nova Scotia. Pugwash,
what was it about, this Pugwash? I've never heard of
this. Well, it's basically part of them say it's linked to like the Club of Rome and stuff like that. What you're finding is in that Wheel of Death, you've got people like it's a good name for it, Wheel of Death, because that's what they're actually discussing. You've got people like Bertrand Russell who, around the 1950s, and the Beatles were very close to him, didn't they? They looked up. Well, Paul McCartney.
Paul McCartney apparently did. Yeah.
And
so he says.
I had the luck to meet a guy called Bertrand Russell, famous philosopher, and he was just living in London, and somebody said, "Oh, he lives on that street." So I went, "Hey, Bertrand, can I come in?" So I talked to him, and he was very gracious, and he actually pointed out to me that there was this war going on called Vietnam, and so I went to the studio that evening and said to the guys, "Hey, met Bertrand, and he's really against this war." So I sort of explained to everyone the issue. Now then, after that, John became the activist.
I see.
But that's all I said, was I actually introduced him to the issue.
You were the catalyst.
The catalyst in some way, yeah. But no, he went on to become the real activist, as you say, with Yoko. They did that bed in and stuff.
Bed in, yeah,
which was great. It brought everyone's attention to it. And I always say, people often say to me, "Do you think music can change the world. I said, well, have you ever seen that footage of people chanting, singing, "Give peace a chance" to the Nixon White House? That changes.
And Imagine, his other song, Imagine.
Bertrand Russell, as we found out, was a cousin of the Ashers and many more that were surrounding.
Yeah.
So Russell, and he was the Duke of Tavistock, which is the Russells are the Dukes of Tavistock.
That's right. Have you heard the speech that he gave, that Bertrand Russell gave at the Pugwash conference? I've made a recording of it. If possible, we can slot it in here.
Yeah, we'll put it in right here. Yeah.
Lord Russell,
Yeah.
you say that it's imperative almost that politics be kept out of this. But is there not a political question that is bound to arise in the minds of the statesmen? Are they not bound to ask, can you envisage a scheme of disarmament and the wiping out of nuclear weapons which would not deliver the free world into the hands of communists, as long as men can still fight with sticks and stones, people will say? Isn't the only answer world government?
Would you like to repeat that, Christopher?
Is the only answer
Yes.
the world government?
Yes. Well, I'm entirely in agreement with you. I don't think prohibiting nuclear weapons in itself is the slightest good. You could prohibit them and have a universal agreement to prohibit them, and they would still be used if ever there was a war. And I don't think there's any point whatever in mere prohibition. The only thing that is any use at all is not to have a war. And as I said, suggested at the tail end of what I was saying, we can avoid war by expedience for the moment, but ultimately we must have some international authority which is able to prevent war. That is the ultimate goal, but it'll take some time to reach that goal, I think. But I do say most emphatically that merely to prohibit nuclear weapons won't get you anywhere at all.
He's calling for a new world order, basically. He's saying that we need to achieve world peace, and to do that, we need to form a new world order. But he's said that in so many speeches, in so many of his books, he's written about various subjects to do with quote unquote world peace, and he's always it's always bringing in the need for a world government, a world authority, an international authority, a world army. That seems to be his answer to everything.
It's interesting how they call stuff like say world peace, when in reality what it means is getting rid of most of the people on Earth so we can have everything.
Or having a massive war that might then turn into world peace.
Or insert the word in the middle, world in pieces. Yeah,
exactly.
Why was it called Pugwash?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because it was in Nova Scotia in a place called Pugwash.
Oh, right.
All the time I've ever heard that.
Yeah. Seaman Staines and all that, yeah. Roger the cabin boy, yeah. And that would a BBC thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was, yeah.
I mean...
Yeah, Master Bates.
Master Bates, Seaman Staines, Roger the cabin boy. I mean, as funny as that is,
followed by Jim will fix it. Captain Pugwash, and in 5 minutes we'll be going over to the BBC for Jim will fix it.
Yeah. And then we'll have Rainbow.
I've seen I've seen a clip of Rainbow where they're actually talking filth in like children code, aren't they? And again, it's really funny, but
and sinister at times.
You've got to be pretty fucking sick to be doing
and they share a bed together, you know. You got the pink hippo.
It's a good impression of him, doesn't
it? Going to sleep with Zippy and what's his name? Yeah, whatever. Bungle.
Yeah,
Bungle.
Bungle.
Yeah, all sharing a bed together. Okay, yeah.
So, right.
But, yeah.
Oh, sorry, mate.
Okay, so yeah, Bertrand Russell is directly related to the Russell bloodline of the Duke of Bedford. So if we take this back a few centuries, it can be traced back to the town of the English town of Tavistock in the county of Devon. That's where the Russell bloodline goes back to. And so that's why we have the Tavistock Institute and Clinic. That's why they're called the Tavistock Institute and the Tavistock Clinic, because they're based in Bloomsbury in London, in Tavistock Square. And the Duke of Bedford, the Duke of Bedford bloodline actually owns Bloomsbury in London, which is where you find Covent Garden. The British Museum is situated there as well. Tavistock Square.
One of the 7 buses blew up in Tavistock Square.
Yeah, in Tavistock Square. And that's where the Tavistock Clinic began. in 1920. It's not there anymore, but that's where it was first based. So basically, if we take this back in history, the Russell bloodline, it goes back to the 16th century. That's around the time they became the Duke of Bedford. And it's all to do with King Henry VIII, when he was transferring ownership of properties and riches. He was taking them out of the hands of the Catholic monasteries and handing them over basically to his courtiers, if you like. It was called the dissolution. And one of those to benefit, one of those royal courtiers was a guy by the name of John Russell, who became the first Earl of Bedford. And then he later went on to take actual ownership of the town of Tavistock in Devon. And it was in the 17th century through marriage that the 5th Earl of Bedford got ownership of Bloomsbury in London. And the Tavistock Clinic, when it began in 1920, it started in this small building on Tavistock Square, named after the Duke of Bedford bloodline. And the building was actually donated to them by the 11th Duke of Bedford. So basically one of Bertrand Russell's family, basically.
Forebears, yeah.
Yeah, forebearers. And I think it's important to note that within the mainstream, people think that Bertrand Russell is this great peace-loving philosopher who was all about world peace and love. But when you look into his background, he was a supporter of eugenics. He wanted a world government. And he was quite
open about all this stuff, wasn't he, Matt?
He was. He used to say it in speeches. Yeah, yeah.
Also, the Russell family in America, Fitz Springmeier has him in his book as one of the bloodlines of the Illuminati. Now, whatever that means, and it's not just the Russell name; it's the spin-off names as well. Like we found with the Huxleys, there are other names that are cousins of Aldous Huxley, for instance, the chap that set the BBC up. I forget his name now. No doubt I'll pop it up on the screen. He was the chief engineer of the BBC, worked at Marconi, pretty high up. So even though they might not be called Russell, the married name might be Smith or something like that. They're still of the Russell bloodline.
Yeah, they marry through into other families. Yeah.
Exactly. In fact, I seem to think that they're more used because people can't follow that. We do because we follow the chain of events, but they're more utilised than the actual name.
I think there's one speech, and I wish I had it here in front of me. There's this book. You can buy a couple of books that are really useful because they've got all his speeches in, or a lot of his speeches. And if you go through them, you're thinking, "Fucking hell, what a character!" And one of them, which I read about around the time of the lockdowns or just afterwards, was very of its time. It was from the 1950s, I think, the speech. But it was very much of the time when I was reading it, and it was to do with he was talking about eugenics and how we can lower the population, and he said something along the lines of, I'm not even going to paraphrase it because I can't remember the exact words, but something along the lines of what we need to bring the population down, what would be called for, what would be welcome, is if we had some kind of biological event that took place that would help to bring it down. If war's not going to bring it, then some biological effect upon humanity would be most welcome to help us to achieve our target.
When you think if that was in the 50s, that would just
sometime around then, yeah.
2 world wars have just happened, and he's saying,
and he still
wars aren't going to do it.
He still wants it to go down.
Yeah.
It's not enough.
We've actually failed as well. We've failed.
Yeah, we've failed.
We haven't quite got the numbers to what we want them to. So we need a biological protein virus so we can inject everyone with poison.
Yeah. So what a great philosopher
As a side
he
note,
was.
There's a lot of Tavistock streets in England, isn't there? Only just as observation, because I post quite a lot of posts out. I've seen a lot of Tavistocks, and my son's living somewhere in London, and I walk past the Tavistock street there. So they're all over the shop for some reason. That name.
A lot of Russell squares as well.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know if there's any sort of like obelisks or. And think pentagrams. You know what I mean? Anything that. What I mean is, I can't see. I mean, some of them might just be named that street because it's named that street, but I don't think you name a street just out of naming a street in London anyway, just haphazardly.
No,
there's going to be a reason behind it.
Especially if the family that owns that piece of land, i.e., Bloomsbury, they originate from Tavistock in Devon. Then, if that area in London where the Tavistock Institute or Tavistock Clinic, from which the Tavistock Institute was born from, is called Tavistock Square. That's not a coincidence, surely. You know,
and also we're bringing back into 2020. We bring the Garraway connection to Tavistock, where Dolly Draper, Mr. Draper, who was used as poster boy of all things. And he was a director at Tavistock on the board of trustees. How much closer do you need to get before we realise that this operation is running from the 1920s up to the present day?
And it could have been going before then, even.
I'm sure it was.
Because it was Hugh Crichton Miller, wasn't it? I think he was a psychiatrist who is credited with founding what became the Tavistock Clinic, and it was based on his findings during the First World War. I think it was.
That's right.
Soldiers that were shell shocked and post-traumatic stress disorder, which at the time was an unheard of thing back in those days. So I understand generals in the army and officers would see their soldiers having the shakes and not wanting to go back on the battlefield. They would see that as cowardice, when actually they were going through some kind of breakdown. It was trauma. It was basically they'd gone through a trauma.
Some of them were shot, believe it or not, for cowardice.
Yeah, they were. Yeah.
You don't even need to be shot to get that. It can be just the continuation.
Yes,
of
it's
that
the continual life of being in the trenches.
It shatters
the horrors
your
of living.
system.
Well, there is one good thing though, one good bit of news, and I can't believe that everything can be a psyop. They actually closed down the Tavistock thing with the LGBTQ thing. Yeah. Or just moved it or whatever. But what I mean is there enough pressure for them to actually close it, because they said they were targeting autistic kids to get sex change, weren't they?
Yeah.
But even that was done quite quietly, wasn't it? It weren't they're happy to shout about people getting transgendered, but they didn't actually it weren't shouted about that much when they actually stopped the Tavistock Clinic.
But a lot of these people, a lot of these psychologists like Aubrey Lewis or Sir Aubrey Lewis and people like that were following the mantra of the German guy Ernst Rudin, who was a Nazi eugenicist that were working in the Maudsley Hospital. I mean, just the stuff that we found out about the sleep room that you got, the book that you found.
William Sargent
that would link to all the American MK Ultra. And this carries on, doesn't it? I would. Go on, sorry.
I was just going to say about with Hugh Crichton Miller was the reason that we're told that he started the Tavistock Clinic was because he'd been looking into these First World War soldiers, and he was effectively he's kind of regarded, whether he is or not in reality, but we're told that he was a pioneer in recognizing that these soldiers weren't cowards. They were going through some kind of stress, and he began to look into the traumas that they were suffering, and it's from that we got the Tavistock Clinic. But I've got a quote here from the Tavistock Institute, and this was on their website a few years ago, and I don't know if it's there anymore. I just want to kind of illustrate how it's gone from being a clinic, which is meant to basically what the clinic was about. What we're told is they used the experience they found in treating traumatized soldiers. They wanted to transmit that to Civvy Street, basically, and treat civilians. So with that in mind, it's gone from, we're told, it started as something that was meant to be caring for the psychologically dispossessed, the mentally ill, and it's morphed into something that's like an octopus that's taken over, or is trying to take over, all our lives and all of society. This is what was on the Tavistock Institute's website. Whether it's still there anymore. In our earliest history, a group of medical professionals who called themselves the Tavistock Group worked with the British Army to help soldiers who had been prisoners during World War II return to civilian life, and equally importantly, to help their families and communities adjust to having them back. From returning soldiers to rapid changes in business management, workplace demographics, and the adoption or rejection of new technologies throughout the 20th century, we pour ourselves into organizations needing change, individuals needing change, systems needing change. What arises from the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations isn't abstract, it's applicable study making a difference in all our lives. So it's gone from treating soldiers in World War II and World War One to basically putting their tentacles into every aspect of human society in Britain and perhaps the rest of the world, of course. But so that's them. That's them.
That's them admitting what they're doing.
Website.
Yeah, that's without the hidden agenda.
I would hazard a guess as well that guy didn't discover shell shock. That generals and
I
stuff.
think they already knew about that.
That's
before,
right.
the war
Can't tell me
started,
on World War One. They can't tell me that they didn't know that people were walking off Gaga because they'd been bombed too much.
Basically, he was probably looking at the trauma to see how they could use it to control.
The World War One was about getting as many people traumatized so they could utilize what they were learning on the society as a whole.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just about killing people. The other side effect or positive effect, whichever way you look at it, was traumatizing millions of men to pass on that trauma to their offspring, to make them mentally ill today.
Yeah.
Changing the sex and all sorts of things.
Because how do you go from that to being a clinic for transgender? It's a bit of a swing, isn't it?
But we think it's a bit of a swing. But when you think about it, when you see all the psychologists there, I'd say the majority of them that I've looked into, I'm sure I can speak for Matt, most of them were part of the British Eugenics Society or the American Eugenics Society.
Well, if you look at if it's true that the Tavistock Institute was part of a psyop to was socially engineering or created the 60s counterculture. What was part of the 60s counterculture about? The 60s, that decade, it was about the breaking down of the family, we're told, breaking down of the family, and through, and I'm not putting down homosexuality. I'm just stating that through the legalization in England of homosexuality in 1967, and I'm not saying it shouldn't have happened, but what I'm saying is perhaps that was just their way of providing a pathway so that then they could invite in all the other more people and more organizations to come in and to begin the drive towards transgenderism, and the rainbow movement, what we've got now, basically.
Yeah, they needed to clear up homosexuality and get that legitimized before they could go to the next step, which was the transgender thing.
Yeah,
and at the same time, they brought in the pill. They had women's rights, all this stuff at exactly the same time.
The divorces were made easier as well in the 60s as well.
What was a lady called who did Ms. Magazine?
Gloria Steiner, is it?
Gloria Steiner, yeah.
Oh, Gloria Steinem, yeah, she was CIA.
Yeah, and she was a pageant girl, apparently.
Yeah. Oh, right, okay. Yeah. Oh, here we go.
Dom's getting into pageant girls.
Yeah. I can think of worse things.
There's worse things to research at the late hours of the night.
But
just make sure they're girls before you...
Yeah.
Well, that was the whole point of that documentary. This guy says they're all men. Now, whether they are or not, I don't know. But
I can't wait any longer, lads. I'm opening me a bottle of Pinot.
That's your choice, Chris.
What, you haven't opened it already?
No, I'm disappointed.
I was holding off.
Bloody hell.
My missus smuggled it in when we were talking. She got it from
Why did she have to smuggle it in? We didn't even press record.
Because she's mental.
Yeah, right. But I thought that was sort of like a normal thing. I'm actually being married to you, having to be mental.
Fair enough.
What is that, Blue Nun?
It's not Blue Nun. It's not Blue Nun. It's a Pash Waitrose version.
Okay.
Blue elephant.
Might as well.
Blue elephant.
Blue elephant.
Well, free label.
So we've only got on one spoke, I think, at the moment. Yeah. Yeah. And
I didn't even realise we'd done a spoke.
Yeah, we haven't even gone into much detail on that, to be fair. But
no, but I think we need to mention Bertrand Russell because he's in the background.
He can't not be mentioned, to be honest with you, because the whole thing about Bertrand Russell knowing the Ashers Elliot family, which he would do because they were cousins, which we'll get into in a sec.
Yeah.
But he introduced, supposedly, Paul McCartney to the peace movement, who then introduced it to John Lennon. Then John Lennon met Yoko Ono at the Indica Gallery, that was owned by Peter Asher.
Yeah.
Peter Asher plays an integral part in all of this, not just at the beginning of the Beatles or just when Paul McCartney was in a relationship with Jane Asher, but right more or less up to the present day. And
I mean, do you know what the bloodline is between the Ashers and Bertrand Russell? I've got it written down somewhere.
Yeah, we did it on. I know there's a couple of links in. It's the the Dylans, isn't it? Is it the?
Yeah,
Anyway,
I'm going to try and find it. But basically, while I'm trying to find it, basically what this Wheel of Death is, this is the way I see it, and it's about the Beatles as an entity. So I'm not. It's not a wheel that is. It's not the Beatles as in a band, as in as we know them as
The cult,
as a band.
cult.
It's the entity. It's basically the entity and what they stand for. Not what they stand for as in watching them on TV, playing a concert or in a film, a movie or something, but basically what they stand for as an entity, what they represented, what they represent now. So you've got on that spoke, you've got world peace through John Lennon, of course. You've got the Tavistock Institute because you've got people who think that they were Tavistock controlled. You've got their merchandising deals through Cell-Type. You've got their recording career with George Martin, their producer. You've got the Lennon and McCartney composing name. You've got LSD, which they helped to champion in the 60s. You've got meditation and their promotion of transcendental meditation and
that brings in the Maharishis.
That brings in the Maharishi. You've got the guy who introduced, or so we're told, the guy who introduced John Lennon to Paul McCartney when they were teenage boys, who is Ivan Vaughan. He's got connections to basically all these spokes. This is if you look at the sketch I've put together, it's the Beatles as an entity is in the middle. Then you've got all these spokes coming out, and all these aspects I've just mentioned are part of it. But what binds them all together is the Asher family, or the Eliots, which is the maternal side. So basically every aspect of what you would call the Beatles as an entity, what made them operate and how we see them and how they are regarded, has the hand of the Eliots or the Asher family in it.
Bertrand Russell and Margaret Asher, or Elliot, are direct cousins, not like 25th cousins away from each other. They share a great-grandfather who was Henry Augustus Dillon Lee,
That's it,
the 13th Viscount Dillon of Costello Gallin. And he was Russell's great-grandfather and Margaret's great-great-grandfather.
Yeah.
That's how close they are as a family. And you can't tell me that he was going round to their house at 57 Wimpole Street and they didn't know that they were cousins. Especially given Russell's intelligence, he would have known that they were related. I can't. Yeah. I mean, I know we're guessing, but I can't believe that they didn't know that they were. So when they're writing these stories, I mean, there's that Paul McCartney discussed the Vietnam War with Bertrand Russell. Nowhere in these articles does it say that they were direct cousins. It's taken two idiots like me and you to dig around and find out this information.
Yeah.
So the question then arises: why? Why wouldn't that be a story? That would be a story, wouldn't it? Bertrand Russell, cousin of Margaret Asher, tells Paul McCartney, blah, 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 who's going out with his niece, such and such, or whatever it might be, Jane Asher. That would be I'm sure that would be a story, surely.
But again, in fact, that's another veil that's lifting, isn't it? Because they've got away with it for so long, and now people are looking at the bloodlines, which never happened before. Up until what? I don't know. When did people start looking at bloodlines? 10, 20 years ago? Fritz Springmeier. Let's start with him, but it's not that old, is it? It's not
Dave
that,
McGowan did a bit of it. Yeah,
it's a new phenomenon, and that's why, like you guys have said, that they keep coming out with it now in popular press, don't they? Because like that one you pointed out, that Imitation Game one. What's his name? That actor, and he was actually related to the guy he played in the Imitation Game.
It was the. Benedict Cumberbatch.
Why would they not use that to promote the film?
I know. Yeah. Why wouldn't they use Tom Hanks to promote Disney that he were a cousin of his? Or,
exactly. So you get the feeling this has always happened, and now people are pointing it out, like yourselves, that now they've got no choice but to address it and say, "Oh, I'm related to this guy or whatever." But you would have used that in all the blurb. Can you believe Benedict Cumberbatch is playing one of his relatives in?
It's a great promotion piece.
Yeah.
You would have thought.
Yeah.
But I mean, the reason, because maybe John Lennon is straying off it a little bit if we mention the peace thing. But basically, we've attached this, haven't we, to the spoke?
I don't think we are, Matt, and I'll tell you why. Because the peace thing, he was laid up in Amsterdam and in Canada.
It was Canada and Amsterdam.
Yeah.
1969. The bed-ins for peace.
Montreal.
Yeah.
Montreal.
Yeah.
But that was right next door to Montreal University, where Cameron was doing his MK Ultra research right at the same time.
Yeah.
So they were having a sleep-in right next door to...
But they were.
Yeah. Right next door to you and Cameron's... it is anyway. We're the same place, because I even had like you do, I had a look on the map of how close it was, and it was right on the fucking weird bastards that were right on the edge of the sort of complex of Montreal University, if I've got the right university there. But it was whichever. I'm sure it won't. We have to look it up now. But
yeah. But I mean, if we think of John Lennon that as an entity, if you like, he's. A lot of people will, when they think of John Lennon, will think, "Oh, peacenik. Oh, he's the peace-loving campaigner for peace." Between kind of, especially between 1969 and 1971. So you had those 2 bed-ins for peace, where he stayed in bed for a week to protest against the Vietnam War. He did one in, as you say, Canada, and another one in Amsterdam. And then there was Happy Christmas, War is Over, the song. I think that came out in 1970 or 71, sometime around then. But basically what Paul McCartney, if that is Paul McCartney, just to add that in as a side note, as what he's been saying for the last few years, and he said this in a few interviews, and I think he's also said, you can find a video of this online, actually. He talked about this on The View, that TV show The View. I think he talked about this. He talked about meeting Bertrand Russell. And basically what he's inferring is, in all these interviews, is that he met with Bertrand Russell, and it's thanks to him having a chat with Bertrand Russell at his home in London, and being alerted to the fact that there was a Vietnam War going on, and that the Americans were basically conducting a quote-unquote imperialist war in Vietnam. This was in 1964 that Bertrand Russell told Paul McCartney this. Paul McCartney's inferring that after that conversation, he then went back, let's say, to the recording studio where John, Ringo and George were, and he said to them, "Hey lads, I just had a chat with Bertrand Russell, and he was telling him about the Vietnam War, and what's going on over there, and the unjustness and the horrors and the unjust practices of the American imperialist war machine, if you like." And this pricked up John Lennon's ears, and it's from that point Paul McCartney is inferring that then John Lennon began to look into that sort of stream of consciousness, if you like, and that's what kind of spawned him to become this peace campaigner later on in
that's got
later years.
Handler connotations to it, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, some people might say, "Oh, come on, what you're telling me the Beatles would have never heard of the Vietnam War?" But if you think, it's difficult for us to talk about this stuff because we weren't there. We're not old enough to have been there at the time. But if you think about it, it's quite possible that they might have not have been that aware of it. They might have read it somewhere in the newspaper, but would it have been a huge story at the time? Because this is 1964. This is before the troops had been sent over by the Americans. This is before there was the war. There was no actual war footing, no official war footing at this point in time. The troops didn't start being sent over there.
Just happened, didn't it?
That was 1965, I think. So this is pre-1965. At this point in the game, the Americans were kind of policing the area, if you like. But there weren't conscriptions.
The protest didn't start until...
Well, there were some protests in 64, I think, but these were
don't get involved type protests as opposed to anti-war protests.
It's very
it was don't get involved.
Very early for him to get involved in that.
Yeah, and it was pre-hippie era because the hippies didn't turn up till 66, 67. A lot of these protests that were going on in 64 in America and maybe other parts of the world were kind of like regular folk, like teachers, priests, mums, dads, this kind of thing. There wasn't that student hippie element because there weren't any hippies. It was pre-hippie. So, and don't forget that the British didn't send over any troops to Vietnam. So this is before the troops were sent over to Vietnam. This is about a year before, 1964.
So Gulf of Tonkin was 2nd of August, 1964.
And I think the Gulf of Tonkin, the resolution to send over troops didn't happen until much later on, didn't it? I think it was.
I don't know when that was.
Because they
I thought I'd
then
get that
passed
right,
the
'cause you'll have
resolution.
people shouting at us otherwise.
But I think the first troops didn't go over till 65, I think.
Quite possibly.
I might be wrong, but I think it's.
I think there were troops there, but there were advisors.
Advisors, police.
Yeah.
So this is. I'm guessing this is pre that.
Yeah.
So it's very possible that in the English media, in the newspapers, if the Vietnam War was mentioned, it wouldn't have been front page. Plastered all over the.
But
news.
also even today, right? There's two wars going on that everybody knows about: Ukraine and what Israel's doing in Gaza. But there are probably 30 or 40 other wars that are being funded by the British, American military
that we don't know about,
that we don't even know about today. And how much media coverage have we got access to in comparison to what they had access to in the 60s?
The thing with Bertrand Russell is apparently how this meeting between Paul McCartney and Bertrand Russell happened was what in one or two of the interviews that Paul or whoever it is has said happened was, I always feel I have to say that because somebody on YouTube is going to say, it's not Paul McCartney, right? You bloody. So whoever it was, Paul or not Paul, apparently this meeting was set up by a friend of a friend because Paul McCartney claims that he had read some of Bertrand Russell's works. He'd heard some of his speeches on TV or the radio, whatever, and he was impressed with what he heard. And I thought, really? And the guy that introduced them, this friend of a friend, was a guy called Ralph Schoenman, who was an American anti-war campaigner, and he was an assistant to Bertrand Russell. And I think he was the guy that when Paul McCartney knocked on the door, he's the guy that opened the door and said, come in. Basically, Ralph Schoenman, with Bertrand Russell in 1966, they set up what was called the Russell Tribunal, and which was otherwise known as the International War Crimes Tribunal. And they met, I think, in Sweden in 1967. And basically, this was an unofficial war crimes tribunal against America and what was going on in Vietnam. So they basically had this delegation set up, and they sent some people over to Vietnam, to the war zones, to come back with reports about what was going on in Vietnam. And they basically came to the conclusion that what was going on over there was basically, nothing short of American imperialism, and.
But as we know that we've had other stories that he actually met at the Eliot household, Bertrand Russell. I mean, in that interview that you found of Peter Asher being interviewed by that, I don't know who that DJ or was on that radio. Did you find out who it was?
It's the Raconteurs podcast, and I think it's Guy Pratt, who's a bass player, and he now plays with Pink Floyd when they play live, or he plays with Dave Gilmour from Pink Floyd. And the other guy and the other guy who does the podcast is the guy from Spandau Ballet, Gary Kemp?
Right.
Yeah, and it's called the Raconteurs podcast,
Okay.
and they interview various musicians and people from the music world, and they interviewed Peter Asher. I think he just released his memoirs or something.
Well, there is one thing that I tried to ask you about. Well, it's not. I tried to ask you. Unfortunately, I've got the story I have is a bit garbled, and I tried to get in touch with the relevant guy, but he hasn't replied to my email, which is someone who was going out with. I don't know if it was a granddaughter of your mother's or if there's such a thing, but he said he was at your house and had to look after your mum one night, and she was quite old at the time, and she said that she'd helped Paul. Paul wanted to learn string arranging, and she'd helped him write string, and she had somewhere a handwritten sort of string chart for yesterday.
Oh.
Which apparently she got out and showed to him, and then it went
Who is this
into this
person?
wall of papers. It's called Andy Drudy.
No idea. Sorry. Okay. No, I don't know that name.
I can't imagine he'd be a bit, yeah.
But do you think, did your mother ever give any help to Paul?
Yeah, but,
yes.
But just the idea of your mum helping
yes,
him to
she
write
did.
string
Oh, she did.
is the key.
She helped him with what between her and George Martin, I suppose, at separate occasions. I mean, not together, but yeah, Paul was interested in orchestral music and orchestral instruments and what was what. I mean, and she did teach him some of that stuff, no question.
That's brilliant. And that's fantastic. Isn't that what a lovely thing?
Yes. So I don't know exactly having not been in either of those tutorials, what was George Martin and what was my mum, but I know she contributed, yes.
So is this just by coincidence that she taught George Martin?
Yes.
Where did she teach George?
This is widely written wrong. They keep saying, oh, my mother must have taught at the Guildhall because she taught George Martin and that's where he went. But it's actually more complicated if you care about how it exactly happened. He was at the Guildhall School of Music. When you were studying piano and composition, you had to take a second instrument, which you had to pass an exam on. He had chosen as his second instrument the oboe. He realized that he'd been giving his second instrument studies short shrift, and he was concerned that his oboe playing wasn't up to snuff and he wouldn't pass the exam. He looked for an independent oboe tutor who could give him private lessons. My mother was oboe professor at Royal Academy, which is, of course, a rival institution from the Guildhall, but she also gave private lessons. At the time, that would have been in our flat in Great Portland Street before we moved into Wimpole Street. So amazing. George would have come there and did come there for oboe lessons to get his oboe playing up to the level of his main instrument, piano.
But I heard McCartney tell a lovely story about how he actually just went and knocked on Bertrand Russell's door to ask him about the Vietnam War. And apparently he went in and they had a lovely chat.
I didn't know that. My father met Bertrand Russell.
But it was this Ralph Sherman guy who was his assistant, who was Bertrand Russell's assistant, who's actually come out and said, it was me. I was the one that arranged it.
Right.
But the thing is, so you got Bertrand Russell and this Ralph Sherman, but you got Bertrand Russell setting up this tribunal. I think he was honorary chairman of it. And he's talking about the end of the Vietnam War, how unjust it is. And you think, oh, what a nice fellow. What a lovely fellow. But here's a passage from one of his books. Has Man a Future, right? This is from 1961. And this is a book where he's basically calling for an end to war and calling for world peace, okay? He says, a much more desirable way of securing world peace would be by a voluntary agreement among nations to pool their armed forces and submit to an agreed international authority. All nations would have to agree to reduce national armed forces to the level necessary for internal police action. No nation should be allowed to retain nuclear weapons or any other means of wholesale destruction. The world authority should have power to recruit in every country and to manufacture such weapons as might be deemed essential. In a world where separate nations were disarmed, the military forces of the world authority would not need to be very large and would not constitute an onerous burden upon the various constituent nations. In order to prevent the development of national loyalties in any part of the international forces, it would be necessary that each fairly large unit should be of mixed nationality. Now, this sounds very much like the
illegal immigration as well.
Exactly. It says there should not be European contingents or Asian contingents or African contingents or American contingents, but there should be everywhere, as far as possible, a balanced mixture. The higher commands should, as far as possible, be given to men from small countries which could not entertain any hope of world dominion. There would, of course, have to be a right of inspection by the world government to make sure that the disarmament provisions in every country were obeyed. That's today, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean,
so this is this great philosopher.
New World Order.
NATO, UN. It kind of sounds all right, though, the way he describes it, doesn't it?
It sounds very picturesque and utopia.
Yeah.
I don't
and then he goes on about breaking all the countries off into federal states, which is very much what David Icke was saying years and years and years ago when he was saying that they want to bring about a one world order. And the way they're going to do that is first European Union, then you've got the American Union.
Then they've got BRICS now as well, haven't they?
Yeah. Well, if you as I'm not going to read the whole speech of Bertrand Russell's here or what he wrote in this book, but basically what he's saying is there should be federal states like countries, and they should be, so you'd have China, you'd have India and Ceylon joined together, Japan and Indonesia joined together, the Mohammedan world, he describes it as, which is Pakistan and Morocco. Equatorial Africa should be merged together. The USSR and the satellite countries, so that would be Poland and all of those joined together, and Western Europe, Britain, Ireland, Australia, and New Zealand all joined together as a federal, and the USA and Canada, and so on and so on. So this is basically sort of a march towards a one world.
But it's classic, isn't it? They've got a guy who's like this peace loving, all about, and then and is that moment.
But why
in time,
would a load of
he's used as the new world order guy, isn't it?
Anti-conformist hippies be surrounded by aristocratic bloodlines? People that are fighting the system don't generally sort of
it's weird,
magnetized towards royalty or
the Duke of Bedford, Duke of Bedford bloodline.
Also, like Tara Brown, who will come on to, all of these bloodlines seem to resonate towards. I mean, Oasis did the same thing, didn't they? Oasis were in number 10. They were meant to be this hard-edged
Cool Britannia,
band, Cool Britannia nonsense. So it's still happening up to present day.
But another thing that Bertrand Russell was, and I've talked about this in one or two of my own videos, and it is essential to understanding the 60s counterculture and how Bertrand Russell fits into it, is he was the founder member of the CND, the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament, I think, which began in 1958. And I've talked about this. I talked about this with Ed Opperman, who's a broadcaster in America, and I talked about the CND, and he'd never heard of it. So I don't think
I listened to Ed Opperman report in it. Yeah,
and he said to me, "CND, what's that?" So I think outside of Britain, I don't think they're that well known. But basically, the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament (CND) was founded in 1958. So this is in the era of the so-called Cold War. So basically we're told it was an organization that was founded by Bertrand Russell to do away with nuclear weapons, to get every country to stop making them and to destroy whatever stockpile they had and not to make any more, to bring about, here we go again, world peace. And at the time, one way that Americans would know of the CND is by the logo, because it's taken on a life of its own. The CND logo is now what you would call the peace symbol. So certainly in the 60s, you would have seen hippies. There's footage of photographs of hippies in America going to anti-Vietnam War protests, holding them up.
They come up with that broken upside-down cross. Did they come up with that, the CND then?
That's actually the CND logo, but
that's as famous as the smiley face, isn't it?
Yeah,
the CND logo is
it's anarchy sound now, isn't it? I suppose anarchy.
Yeah. But it's actually a CND sign.
So you could say
become the peace sign.
You could say Tavistock came up with the peace sign.
Yeah, well, that's it. Bertrand Russell. All right, he wasn't the guy who sat down. Well, we don't know that. Officially speaking, he didn't sit there and draw.
But Matt,
this
as we
sketch.
know, right, the reach that Bertrand Russell, for argument's sake, with your, like say, the Bloomsbury people and all that type of stuff, there were artists, poets. As we know, within the information research departments and all these other,
IRS,
they got
IRD, sorry,
ID. They got all these artists and poets and authors and things like that to do all the writing and artwork and things. I mean,
and also let's not forget it's an upside down broken cross, by the way.
Yeah. And the thing about the CND is, in England, in Britain, in the late 50s, early 60s, it was massive. It was a hugely popular movement. There was the Aldermaston marches, where they used to take place on Easter bank holiday weekend or something, where they would march from London to Aldermaston, where I think there was a nuclear site. I think that's why they used to march there, and it would take a few days to get there. They would literally walk there.
There is rumours as well that they used frequency weapons on the protesters outside the
Greenham Common.
Greenham Common.
Is that where it ended up a lot of women outside Greenham?
That's correct.
That was in the 80s. Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah. So you had all these people walking along Aldermaston, and again, like before, when I was talking about 1964 and the anti-Vietnam War movement, this is the same. You could say it was pretty much the same kind of cross-section of society.
Yes.
So this is pre-hippie times, but the people that were going on these marches were, it was a cross-section. It was priests, it was parents, it was teachers, it was middle class.
Very similar to the global climate warming change nonsense now. Same type of people, I bet.
Same type of people, but the difference with this was, in amongst all of that were so-called bohemians, beatniks, young people who saw themselves as being on the sidelines of society, who were going along to these people who, we're talking 1958, 59, 60, 61, people who, let's say in 7, 6, 7, 8 years' time, in 67, 1968, during the counterculture era, would be the hippies. So these were the proto-hippies. So as people have said, in retrospect, people who were the bohemians at the time, they were going on these marches thinking that they were the only people going on that march who were left field, who were on the fringes, who were anti-mainstream, who were reading beat poetry and playing folk music. And they would suddenly realize that, hey, wait a minute, there's another one over there. Oh, there's another one. And this was a breeding ground. So this organization that Bertrand Russell helped to build was a breeding ground for what became the hippie movement a few years later. And many of the movers and shakers of what became the 1960s counterculture scene of London were part of the CND.
So let's get this straight. Bertrand Russell from that family, and if you remember that video, Chris, of Dominic Cummins's father-in-law, he mentions Bertrand Russell in that. Ancient family, from good stock, blah, 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 right? Geniuses.
The quality is everything. But in general, to be elitist, I think the quality climbs up the tree of life. And therefore, in general, high things in the tree of life have quality and have skills, and they get wonderful degrees at university. And if they marry each other, that gets them better again.
So you wouldn't have minded if one of your children had met someone from a lower socio-economic group who was intelligent and talented and...
Intelligence and talent is lovely, but I want parents and grandparents who've had hands-on success, running their battles well and proving they're wonderful, because one is the subject of one's genes, and I think I like the idea of them being successful genes and winning through to successful puppies.
Some things haven't been in genes though, have they? Like there's been some outstanding people and geniuses who've been like first generation.
No, they aren't. Very few first generation geniuses.
Very few, but there's still few.
Like which?
Would they have been allowed?
That's what I mean,
of course there are.
You're saying very few.
But normally, you think of Bertrand Russell, for instance. Okay, ancient family, Dukes of Bedford, Wittgenstein, ancient family.
So we've got Bertrand Russell. How many things has he actually set up now that we've just spoke about? He set up Tavistock, right?
The anti-Vietnam War movement.
Anti-Vietnam War movement. CND. Right.
The birth of the hippie movement.
The birth of the hippie movement. I mean,
the peace sign.
We're talking of a wheel within a wheel here, aren't we?
How does one guy get that much clout? Well, it sounds like Elon Musk of the...
yeah, obviously.
Same thing, really, isn't it? You know, he's been given all these little things to do all the way through, and he's selling it all through peace, and that he's a peace and a nice guy, and he wants to get rid of all the weapons. I mean, if I have to say, if I'd have been around and not over the fence, I would have been definitely following the beat movement. I'd have been right into it. Jazz, coffee.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Man. Yeah.
Nice clothes, hats. I'd have been right on there.
I'm sorry, it did look very appealing. I would have thought the beat movement, the beatnik movement.
A lot of the beat movement novels are shite. You know, On the Road and all. Jack Kerouac. They were pushed on you, though, weren't they?
I know.
It was, I was so fucking programmed as well. I'd fall for all of them.
Did you like them, though? Did you read them and like them?
No.
But you just said that you thought they were shit. Did you feel inadequate because you didn't understand them?
You needed to like them, didn't you? Because if you didn't like them,
did you sort of secretly feel, I'm a bit thick as shit because I don't understand it?
Well, to be honest, I did like one of William Gibson's one, which was where he was a drug addict. I'm saying I liked it. It was quite dark, but then I remember reading. I tried to read Naked Lunch, and I was like, this is fucking... No, it weren't Naked. It was one of his other books, but I thought, this is shite. But I wanted to like it because it was such a thing to like it that I wanted to like it. But I remember thinking, this is shit. Then I found out that he took all his writing, he chopped it all up, then mixed it up and put it into a book. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm fucking tapping out at that point because that ain't even a book, is it? That's just
that's nonsense.
It's nonsense. And I'm sorry, I can't fall for that one. I'm sorry. That's when I was like, that's horseshit.
Well, that's modern art, isn't it? That's CIA operation.
But I suppose in a way though, that was another one of those little nuggets that were beginning of my conspiratorial mind jumping over the fence because I was like, that's bollocks. That's absolute bollocks. You took a book, you took some writing, chopped it up, mixed it together, and then I'm supposed to read it and go, wow, that's fucking amazing, man. I'm sorry, you can fuck off, William.
Yeah. Isn't that what they said, David Bowie, how he wrote his songs?
Yeah, he
jumbled
did.
all the words
He was
up.
inspired by him to do that.
Ah,
yeah.
get you. Right.
And I think Mick Jagger did one or two songs on one of their albums. I think it might have been Goat's Head Soup.
Nice, good. But it makes a little bit more sense in a song than it would in a book, because
I agree.
Put a harmony to it and whatever.
Yeah,
but in a book, that's ridiculous.
It plays with your mind.
Yeah,
and maybe
that's probably what they're meant to. Yeah,
that's what they're meant to do. Like modern art, it's meant to. When you look at it, modern shite. It's some people get disturbed by it. They look at it, and
my missus is doing a degree in art, right? And she went to a teacher and said, because she's gone into another year, it's something she's always wanted to do, and she said, could I just, instead of doing the modern stuff, would it be possible to go towards painting? And they talked her out of it and said, no. What you've been doing? I mean, she built a fucking 6-foot bear out of wire mesh, and they're like, no, better than doing that. You're better off continuing doing what you were doing. And they convinced her into continuing just to make, modern art instead of actually picking her exact words to be a while ago. I've been there 6 months. I haven't even picked up a fucking paintbrush yet.
So I'm just wondering, Chris, because you're an artist. What do you think of modern art?
Oh, it's horrible. It's horrible. Yeah. It's absolute garbage. I mean, I do like...
Even if you're not an artist, you can't look at that and think that's any good, can you?
But I fell for it all, fire. I used to fall for it all. I'd be like, oh, yeah, it's because they're coming up with some new concept. No, it's shite. No, but you're not thinking like they're thinking, no, because it's shite,
Yeah.
It's one of them things you can go, if you go to a modern art thing and you appreciate it, you can walk away feeling good about yourself because you kind of might understand. I'll tell you a good example of that. Who's that guy? And I don't know his name because I don't know that much about art, if I'm honest with you. The guy he was famous for doing massive blue paintings.
A vast, seemingly endless expanse of blue. Without horizon, sea dissolves into sky. The breathless moment before a dive into the unknown. Pure, vibrant, bold, clear. An invitation to be immersed into the infinite void of international Klein blue. Made in 1961, the year Yves Klein crossed the Atlantic for the first and only time, this monochrome of monumental scale captures California's saturated skies and the blue abyss of the ocean. In Malibu, Klein painted on beaches, breathing salty air, the place evoked by the tactile surface of the work. Boundless, transcendent space, enveloping the viewer.
And he worked, but it were his own kind of blue though. Fact, he'd mixed this certain kind of blue, so that's what made him amazing. And my mate took Seb to one of the exhibitions when he was about 5 or 6 in the Tate Modern, and everyone was stood looking at this blue painting, talking about it. Seb walks up, 6 years old, and says, "Why is everyone staring at that blue picture?" And my mate went, "I don't know." That just sums it up, doesn't it? It's just because they make you feel like with books and with it's in films and music. It's an important film. It's important music. It's an important piece of art. No, it's not. It's a slice of fucking entertainment, and someone's telling you it's important.
What it Yves Klein?
I don't know his name.
No, that's not. I don't think it is. It might be, but no.
There's that other guy. Is it Roshko who did the red ones and there's numerous ones, isn't there? And it's just when you look at some old sculptures and stuff, and outside the train, I've mentioned this before, and outside the Cambridge train station, like if they're going to unveil a sculpture, Matt, and pull the rug off it, there's one outside Cambridge train station that looks like it's got a rug over it, and it's got rope round it. So, you go, oh, is that going to be a sculpture? No, that is the sculpture. Oh wow, you've blown my mind,
right, okay.
Man.
Oh, how different. Because I remember that blue thing, because Channel 4, in its early days, in the early 80s, I think it was a Friday night, they had a blue screen, and that was him.
Right.
And they just showed the blue screen for about half an hour or an hour or something. I can't remember.
And if you didn't appreciate it, you're an idiot. Yeah.
Yeah.
You've got to appreciate it.
That comes back to that when he's saying that, it reminds me of that music that Adorno did. That's just so It just hurts your head to listen to it.
The tonals,
awful stuff.
I mean, you've got to experiment with things, haven't you? But it's just that critique.
Yeah, don't tell me it's finished and it's good. But experiment is fine.
It's just that
it's the experiment. I haven't got a problem with the experimentation, but what I've got a problem is when the CIA and the intelligence services are pushing it.
Yeah,
as some part of an agenda.
Matt, I like jazz, right? And I don't like it to show off. I do like it. I genuinely like it. I was listening to some today. I don't do it to go. Oh. But what's something interesting about, for instance, music as well. I used to be like, really like, oh, I like this. You're quite, snobby about it. Yeah, pretentious about it. But even with jazz now, you'll say to someone, "Oh, music." And don't get me wrong, I don't have loads of knowledge about jazz. I know what I like and what I don't like. But you say to someone and go, "Have you ever heard of this guy?" And if you haven't heard of him, they go, "Oh, what do you mean?" It's like, no, fuck off. I'm not in that game. I'm just,
or what? You haven't heard of him?
Yeah. I also like comics, right? Comic book guys are the worst ones because you get the comic book geek sniff.
I haven't got a girlfriend.
Well, you haven't got Batwoman 234. But we're all guilty of it at some point. We've all done it, and especially when you're younger, that's when they grab you when you're passionate and you're obsessed and you're open to being obsessed about something.
And I come from the DJ world. So I grew up as that's ultimate snobbery.
Thing,
going in a record shop and talking to another DJ and have you got this tune? And the other DJ pretends that they've heard of it and go, oh yeah.
You're stressed that you haven't got that comic or that record that they've got or heard about. You get to an age and you're just like, I couldn't give a fuck. Yeah. But then I suppose there's a lot of that in the conspiracy world,
Yeah, there is. You get people saying, "Have you looked into this?" No, I haven't looked at that.
Well, geek sniff, I call it.
Geek sniff, I call it. They go.
Like James O'Brien sniff. Anyway, moving on, right?
Well, we could. I was going to say because Bertrand Russell does move into the modern art and avant-garde
he does, and that's what I'm
going
to say. Yeah, of course he does,
because it is part of the Congress for Cultural Freedom, the CCF.
Yeah. Can you explain?
All right, I'll try.
Cultural freedom, or a bit of it.
Congress
of Cultural Freedom. Yeah.
Right. Basically, this was a covert operation during the 50s and 60s. It was blown out of the water in 67. It was blown. It came out into public knowledge in 1967 in an article or a series of articles, and they now claim that it doesn't exist anymore. But hey ho, whether it still exists or not, who really knows? But we're told that it blew out the water in 67, became public, and that was it. That was the end of it. But basically, it was a covertly funded CIA project with help from various other intelligence agencies and military around Europe, and with particular emphasis on Great Britain. And basically, it was a collective of musicians, artists, writers, so-called intellectuals, including Bertrand Russell, philosophers, and political figures. And basically, they were brought together by the intelligence services. It was a CIA operation to promote what we'd call modern art and the avant-garde, to promote it to the public, to make it popular to the mainstream public. Now, the official reason that's been given as to why they did this is because this was going on during the so-called Cold War. So basically, the official version of accounts is, here's America. It's trying to prove to the world that it's open to new forms of art, whereas the Soviet Union is very much the opposite. It's there to stifle people's opinion, stifle their the way they want to express themselves in whatever way, shape, or form they want to do that. So, but America is saying here, this is a cultural propaganda war. Basically, America is saying, we're better than the Soviet Union. Look, we're open to, we're open to.
But on a deeper level, it changed what our
perception of art is.
Even in our country,
if you didn't like the modern art movement, you were an idiot. because
Yes.
you don't understand.
Yeah,
You're not
Jackson
intellectual
Pollock.
enough. Yeah.
Jackson Pollock was the most
Jackson
famous
Pollock
one.
was CIA funded. Whether
Was that because they got caught though, Matt, that they came out with this spiel? That it
they
was
got
against,
caught? Yeah, they got caught. I think. Yeah,
Like
like
with the-
1967. Yeah,
like with the Planned Parenthood thing, they got caught,
Yeah.
so therefore they had to admit it. Yeah, Jackson
Yeah.
Pollock's the most famous one, isn't it? Yeah.
He's
Well,
the most famous one.
apparently, is it the I'm looking at my notes here. The National Endowment for Democracy, which was founded under the National Security Directive 77, with President Reagan.
Yeah.
That I think took over from the Cultural Freedom.
Right.
So going back to whether it still exists, it certainly changed direction
Yeah, it
in
changed
1983.
direction,
Yeah, or was rebranded, whatever we want to call it.
Yeah.
What was that lady called? Frances Stoner.
Francis Stoner Saunders, who wrote
yeah.
a book, was it 2015 or sometime,
Yeah,
or was it
yeah.
before then, actually?
Going into real
2000
deep detail on...
Who Paid the Piper is the book.
That's
yeah.
correct, yes. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
a good book
yeah,
as well.
yeah.
Anybody out there
Yeah.
to read?
Yeah,
Who Paid the
and there's a
Piper.
video lecture. If you
Yeah.
go find it, I can't remember what, it's not on YouTube, but there's a lecture that she gives back in the 2000s, I think it was, where she talks
Yeah.
about the book. It's brilliant. Just go and have a look at that. And
She
she'll
names
give you
names
the
and everything,
summary.
doesn't she?
She names names. She's gone through all the files. She's had freedom of access, freedom of information, all of that.
Yeah.
One that might get you, Matt. Sorry, just to interrupt. Famous artist in England called Jenny Savile.
Right.
Oh, right.
And I had a
Interesting
very,
name.
very brief look at her background. It was very there was no information whatsoever. And she's one of Britain's most probably famous living artists, I reckon. Very good, actually. Yeah, Jenny Savile.
So yeah, I mean, the reason I'm mentioning this is, or we're mentioning this, is because Bertrand Russell was involved with the Congress for Cultural Freedom. He was part of it. I think he was even chairman of it for a while, of the British arm of it.
Yeah.
I don't have my notes with me at the minute, those particular notes. I've got loads of other notes, but I think he was chairman for a while.
But that spins off into the Indica Gallery.
That does, because it does spin off into it. Yeah, because the avant-garde, just to give you one example, you've got, or a couple of examples, you've got John Cage, right, who's an avant-garde, quote-unquote, musician, and he's regarded as the godfather of the avant-garde music scene. And basically one of the presentations that he gave back in 1952, it was a piece called 433. I don't know if you've heard of this. So basically, what he does, I think it was premiered at an open air festival or an open air music event or something in 1952. And basically, there was a grand piano on a stage. And this guy walks on, a musician walks on, dressed in the penguin suit, you know, the bow tie and all of that, sits down, lifts up the piano lid, and then sits there for 4 minutes and 33 seconds and doesn't play a note. Then puts the piano lid back down again, gets up and walks off. And afterwards, everyone's in the audience is thinking, what the friggin' hell was that? And John Cage is reported to have said, well, you missed the point if you don't get what that was about. The music was all around you. Don't you get it? You're in the open air. The birds tweeting in the sky. A man flicking his lighter to light his cigarette. Somebody scrunching a sweet wrapper. That's the music that you hear around you. And probably another one is Helicopter Strike Quartet. Okay, and this is Karl-Heinz Stockhausen. Who again is another of the godfathers of the avant-garde music movement, and this is Helicopter String Quartet. And I had to, and you can find this on YouTube, and this is from 1991. And basically, to give you a brief summary of what Helicopter Strike Quartet is, it's a helicopter that goes up into the sky, obviously, and there's two violinists in it, and I think a celloist, and they've got microphones hooked up to the rotor blades. And there's speakers on the ground, and there's people on the ground listening to the sound of three people, 2 of them playing violin, 1 a cello, I think, and there's microphones hooked up to the rotor blade, so it's also recording the sound of the rotor blades going round and round and round, and then the helicopter lands again, and that's the music piece.
This comes back to that, you know, the alteration of frequencies in modern pop songs and things like that.
Yeah,
is that what they were playing around with at that point?
No, they're just fucking bunch of twats with too much money. You're overthinking it, man.
No, because maybe I am overthinking it, but
they've always got loads of money, haven't they? Who can get to fucking flying helicopters?
Well, they get funding, don't they? They get funding,
yeah.
don't they, from the universities? They're funding it, like the Frankfurt University or
where was it?
Places.
I forget where it was. I think it was somewhere in Scandinavia, and a guy did an art piece, and he called I got away with it or something. So he got a grant for like 30 grand. And then just put up a blank canvas. And they were trying to get it back off him. And he said, I told you where it was. He's got away with it, or he's done a runner or
That's
something.
like that Australian Doris who were a breakdancer who wanted a breakdancer in Olympics, wasn't it? Remember her?
But he literally told them what he was going to do, and he was taking the piss, which I thought it was.
Yeah,
they actually put it up as well.
Yeah,
they put it up, and they asked for but then they asked for the money back, and he said, "No, I told you what I was going to do."
A mate of mine years and years ago, we were going to do a DJ night, and this was in Cardiff, of all places, because I live like hundreds and hundreds of miles away from there. So random place. Actually, my sister lives there, so that might have had something to do with it. And my nephew was organising it in this club, and he wanted to have art installation in there as well. This was back in the early 2000s, and one of his mates had just come out of university, and he put up, and he was taking the piss. He basically sent away for a job and got a rejection letter at the BBC or something. So he blew up the rejection letter and put that up as his installation, and that was it.
That's actually quite interesting, though.
Yeah, it's
more interesting
than that shot you were talking about.
Just quickly, while we're on art, right? The Banksy phenomenon I find weird because he puts graffiti up. No one knows who he is, apparently. There's video cameras everywhere around London, but he gets to put he put one on the Halls of Justice recently, but he's not labelled as a vandal. If I went and drew some fucking graffiti on the side of the Halls of Justice in London, pretty sure I'd get arrested. Yeah. And in fact, it'd be national news. We need to find that guy. But he also did a theme park in downtown.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So he does a theme park, numerous art things, gets paid earns loads of money for it, but no one knows who he is.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, but I'm smelling.
I'm smelling about a team of people doing it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm smelling shenanigans.
Yeah.
Why is no one after him? You know, and they put. I know they put one.
Chris, it's Banksy.
They put one up in Peckham, and then there were a big hoo-ha because someone went and nicked it. It was on a stop sign. I used to live in Peckham, and they nicked the thing, and they're like, "He needs to put it back because it's an app." Well, no, it's graffiti. Yeah. It's graffiti. Yeah. That's all it is. It's nothing else.
There's some near where I used to live.
Yeah. I quite like it, to be fair. It looks pretty good. You know, I'm not saying anything about that, but it is a shenanigans. It's more shenanigans.
Well, it gets into paper every time, doesn't it?
Yeah,
every time.
But he'd be hunted, wouldn't it?
But we're going to stay on the art side of it because I want to get into this Indica gallery. There's a couple of things I want to talk about before we go. The Ivan Vaughan Portland Street story, because that blows your mind, does that one, mixed in with all this stuff.
I don't know if I know that one.
No, you probably don't, Chris. But the Indica gallery is right on the avant-garde. So you got...
Oh, yeah, this all ties into what
Bertrand Russell,
talking about.
You got the avant-garde, and all of a sudden you've got Peter Asher, who was a pop star at the time, I believe, opened a gallery and
a bookshop
gallery stroke Mr. Ben. And Paul McCartney apparently was one of the early funders of that.
Yeah, he was bankrolling it. Yeah. He was bankrolling it. This kind of ties in perfectly because Karl-Heinz Stockhausen, the guy with the helicopters, he was actually one of the faces on the Sgt. Pepper album.
All right.
Yeah, he's actually one of those faces of their heroes.
So he was the start of the avant-garde movement, and he was on there.
Yeah, he was on there as well. And another part of the CCF, I think Frances Stoner Saunders actually mentions this in her book, and I noticed it, and I went off on my own little sort of journey, my own little expedition, and found out a little bit more. But basically, what happened around the time that the CCF began, was around the time sort of just after the end of the Second World War, and there was denazification going on. So basically, all the Allies that were in occupied Germany, what they did was they took control of the radio stations, and the concert halls, and the composers were told to stop performing and staging events. The story that we're given is that what the Allies were trying to do was to denazify the media, basically, music, broadcasting, whatever it was. And whilst this was going on and the Congress for Cultural Freedom was beginning to take shape, Francis Stoner Saunders claims that there was this school, which is still running to this day. It's called a school, but it's not really a school. It's called the Darmstadt School. There's actually I could give you the German name for it, but it's all double Dutch to me, if that makes sense. I can't pronounce it, but basically it's called the Darmstadt School. It takes place 2 times a year, and it's been going on since the early 50s. I think it started in the early 50s, still going to this day. It's not a school really. It's basically a place where all the avant-garde composers go and meet. They hold seminars, they talk about their new works, their new compositions, and they compare notes. They hold lectures and performances and so on. And one of the former attendees there was a guy by the name of Konrad Burmer. I think that was his name. And I found an interview with him. It was in German and I had to translate it. So I think I've got it right. But apparently what he was claiming was that John Cage, basically Darmstadt, according to Francis Stoner Saunders and a couple of other authors, was brought into being with funding from the American military. The US military helped to make this happen. So again, this is the Americans' way of funding the avant-garde, basically. So this Konrad Burmer, who was an avant-garde musician, he used to go to these, and he claims that John Cage, Stockhausen, and Theo Adorno were regular visitors to this. And he also claims that those three, he said, to paraphrase him, he says, wherever those guys were, the CIA were never far behind. So basically, he was claiming that Theo Adorno was there under the auspices of the CIA to push forward this avant-gardism.
Because there would be, wouldn't there? Because if you want to be on the west or the east, most of these guys want to be on the west, so they'd have to do as they're told. Also, they'd have to follow the money. That's where the grants are. That's who's paying the wages. Bear in mind, in Germany, there were nothing left. It was all rubble. So, that was their opportunity to get in with the new winners, if you like.
Yeah.
And also, just going back to the CIC, the Counterintelligence Corps that Miles Copeland Jr., forgetting he's called Junior, he was the father of...
Yeah, I know, it's confusing, isn't it? Because you'd think he'd be senior, wouldn't you? Yeah.
But he, by the way, they've got a royal bloodline as well.
Of course.
He was in the Counterintelligence Corps, along with Henry Kissinger, who was a big player in post-war Germany as well. But also, you noticed that there were lots of actors, artists, but there weren't just Americans. There were, I think, the future Chancellor of Germany was one of them, and so a lot of German people, is what I'm saying. Were part of the Counterintelligence Corps, and artists, authors, actors, actresses, etc. were all part of that side of it. So anybody thinks that this weren't going on, I mean, you'd have to be thick as mince.
Germany's quite big in that whole movement as well,
us.
wasn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Yeah, Frankfurt especially.
Berlin.
I think Damas, is it Damas you said it was in?
Darmstadt.
Darmstadt is near Frankfurt. Isn't that in Frankfurt, Darmstadt?
I think it is, yeah.
I think it's in Frankfurt, that. Because, again, going back to the Asher family, Richard Asher's family is German from that area of Frankfurt.
It's just, because the way I see it is, I mean, to tie that into the Ashers, I mean, I might be wrong, but having looked into the whole I look at the 60s counterculture scene, although people who were around at the time never called it the counterculture in Britain, they called it the underground scene. Counterculture is more of an American thing, I think. But from the research that I've done in the last 10 years or so, I would probably say 99% certain that the foundation stone of the British underground movements, what became what you call the hippie movement, or whatever you want to call it, is the avant-garde. That is the foundation. And if you take that away, the whole thing would come falling down, basically.
Oh my word! Listen to this. Right, so Dr. Richard Asher, son of Reverend Felix Asher and Louise Stern. Leopold Stern, born 1830, was Louise's father, and Annie Frances Lawrence. Leopold Stern, this is his great-grandfather. Leopold Stern Kreis was born in Darmstadt, Volkstadt, Essen, Prussia, Germany.
Got a brilliant German accent there, Far.
Yeah, I thought I sounded
Das
like...
ist gut.
Das is good, huh?
I wondered where you'd gone for a minute. I thought there was a German side.
You couldn't work out whether it were German with a twist of Swiss or German with a twist of Dutch or just shite German spoken by a Yorkshireman.
Das ist recht good.
Yeah, das ist recht good. But,
and another member of the CCF, just to throw this in, along with Bertrand Russell, was American poet T.S. Eliot.
Oh my, yeah.
Okay,
I remember now. I remember. Yeah.
Who was friends with Bertrand Russell? Apparently, Bertrand Russell, when he was a visiting professor at Harvard, he taught T.S. Eliot.
Who is a cousin of?
Who is a cousin of Jane Asher's mum, Margaret Elliott. Oh, what a coincidence! And and when T.S. Eliot moved to England, he stayed in Bertrand Russell's flat in Russell. I don't know what is it, Russell
Square Street
Road, something like
one
that.
of those anyway.
Yeah, which is only just a 15-minute walk from the Indica Bookshop.
Yeah,
which was run by Barry Miles, which was part of the Indica Bookshop Art Gallery Collective.
And Peter Asher's partners in that bookshop have interesting backgrounds, don't they?
Oh hell yeah!
It's weird as well. Just as a sign note, bookshops were quite a thing, weren't they? You know, where a lot of things happen. You know, I suppose before. I don't know. It seemed they come up quite a lot, don't they?
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
The Indica Bookshop and Gallery was the meeting point. It was that was the hub, basically, of the '60s underground movement. Even before the underground movement began, the underground movement really began to burgeon, sort of take shape.
I suppose before video and stuff, they would have exchanged
books and just met together,
yeah,
because there would be no other way of doing it. But the what you call the '60s counterculture, or the underground in London, didn't really sort of blow and into sort of what it became until sort of late '66. But the Indica Bookshop and Gallery was around in '65, so it was kind of there before. But it was kind of fostering this movement of people that were beginning to build what would become that movement. Yeah. So it was kind of a catalyst. It was a catalyst ground for what was to come. And all the sort of the people that were looking to make this happen, for this countercultural movement to happen, would meet there, basically. And the partners of that was Barry Miles and Peter Asher, and a guy called John Dunbar. Peter Asher, who is Jane Asher's brother, at the time, he claims that he started this collective. It was due to his money that they were able to start this, because he was in a music duo at the time called Peter and Gordon, and they'd had
He's the Austin Powers guy, who looks just like Austin Powers.
The Austin Powers guy, yeah. And they'd had a few hits. Their biggest one being "World Without Love," which got to number one in America and in Britain, and I think it was so-called written by Paul McCartney. And it's claimed that the royalties that he was getting from his hits, especially that particular one, because it was huge in America, that he used that money to start the Indica Bookshop and Gallery, which began in the same... It moved to Bloomsbury. The bookshop part of it moved to Bloomsbury. But originally, when it started in 1965, it was at St. James's in London, just down an off-road called Mason's Yard.
Yeah,
but why is he not lauded like the Beatles, Asher?
Well,
it because
kind
the
of
links
is.
to no, but what I mean is I didn't know anything about him until we talked about this. Is it because the link's too obvious, maybe?
Well, he wasn't really. A lot of the hits they had were written by Paul McCartney, or so we're told. Paul McCartney wrote most of their hit songs, Peter and Gordon's hits. There was another one called "Woman." And there's a couple more, of others.
They're not well known, though. They're not household
names.
Not
now, no. At the time, they would have been well known.
But why
they were having big hits.
But why?
Well, he continues because he became an executive at Apple, which is the Beatles company, which they formed in 1967, 68.
This is post Paul going out with Jane, isn't it, as well?
Yeah. So Jane and Paul in 1968 split up, and Peter Asher continues to work at Apple. He's like their head of the record label, I think. And then he left with James Taylor, who was discovered by Apple Records, and he took James Taylor with him and became his manager. I think he went to Warner Brothers, I think. But he became a record executive. He became a music executive. But the other guy that was in the partnership, aside from Barry Miles, was John Dunbar. Very interesting. John Dunbar. At the time, he was married to Marianne Faithfull when they started the Indica Collective, if you like. Right. He was married, Marianne Faithfull later left him for Mick Jagger. But if you look at John Dunbar...
Not very faithful, then.
No, not very faithful. If you look at his background, his dad, Robert, had worked for the British government's Foreign Office during the Second World War. He was the deputy head of the Inter-Allied Information Office in Mexico and the Caribbean, and was also head of press, public and cultural relations at the British Embassy in Moscow.
Stroke propaganda.
Yeah, stroke propaganda. And if that's not enough, Marianne Faithfull's dad, Major Robert Glyn Faithfull, had been a British spy. And that's according to Marianne herself. I think there's a documentary where she mentions that her dad was multilingual. So basically, he was really good for dropping behind enemy lines because he could just walk off and take on any accent, and be a really good spy.
A bit like me. I could have been dropped into Germany. I'd have fit straight in.
Oh, yeah.
Leopold Stern, Kreis, Darmstadt, Vollstrand to Essen. Germany.
I find it interesting, Matt, right, that the Austin Powers Asher.
Yeah, Peter.
He had numerous hits, but like I said, he's not a household name. But it's just so clear in it that certain things are chosen to go ahead. Like, there's a new Beatles film coming out, yet another Beatles. You know what I mean? Constantly reminded that the Beatles are fantastic. But the Apple label, and I only found this out about 6 months ago, Hot Chocolate were on their label.
Yeah, they were.
And I love Hot Chocolate. I'm a massive Hot Chocolate fan. And I think they had the most top 10 hits in any other band. But again, they're not a household name like the Beatles, are they? Why? Yeah. How does that work? I
don't know how long I think they had their hits after they left Apple. Apple was really bad at picking hit fans.
Really? I didn't know that.
They turned down David Bowie.
All right. So they ditched Hot Chocolate, who had more number 10 hits, top 10 hits.
They turned down Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young.
All right, okay. So it's not quite as everything's not Tavistock, is it? Sometimes these psycho dickheads make mistakes themselves, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, even the backgrounds of the people he were in business with, and the background of Dr. Richard Asher. What I read as well that
I should just point out that the Indica, basically, what happened was this avant-garde bookshop art gallery. Paul McCartney, through his relationship to Jane Asher, he got to know. He began going out with Jane Asher in 1963, and he moved into the family house in Wimpole Street, where Peter Asher also lived. So which I think is weird in a way, that a man in his 20s is moving into his girlfriend's house and living with the parents. I just find that a little bit
especially when
weird.
you got some brass behind you. If you're skint,
yeah, exactly. If he's becoming a big pop star, and he wants to live he lived in an attic room, according to Peter Asher. He lived in like the smallest room you could possibly get. And it was through him knowing Peter Asher that he got to know the Indica crowd, and then he started to put money into it. Paul McCartney started to.
I heard he used to store the books in the basement. What happened in the basement?
He helped to paint the shop. Yeah. I'm sorry. I thought you meant the shop itself.
In the basement of 57 Wimpole Street, all the books were stored there. And if he'd go and pick a book out of the basement and leave some money on top of the box,
write a credit note. Yeah,
but if he'd put the money in anyway, he could just take a book. Surely. Anyway, that's another story.
Yeah, but putting money into a bookshop is not an investment, is it?
Yeah, well, it was an art gallery as well. Well, but what they were doing, though, and this is what Barry Miles said. He said the Beatles were the most, and I'm paraphrasing again. He said the Beatles were the most commercial band, but the biggest promoters of the avant-garde in the mainstream.
And they knew Bertrand Russell.
Yeah. And they pushed the avant-garde. I
suppose Sgt. Pepper's is.
It's an avant-garde album. Yeah, you think of A Day in the Life, where the orchestra begins to. Where it's going out of tune.
We forget how different, I suppose, it was at the time.
Yeah, at the time it would have been quite chilling to hear that, quite disturbing.
Nice segue into Tara Brown, actually. We might as well jump onto that one.
Yeah.
A Day in the Life. Because that was said to have been written about Tara Brown, who was a personal friend of Paul McCartney. I'm right
Yeah.
there?
Yeah, he was.
Did he introduce Paul McCartney to drugs?
Yeah, basically what happened, you got Tara Brown as this dandy, 60s, what they would have called back in the 60s a dandy. He's a bit of a hip swinger, you know, he's good looking, he's got loads of money. He goes to parties, he owns a clothes boutique with his wife, I think, as well. He drives around in his sports car.
Sounds like me.
He was, but yeah, he's got a so-called elite bloodline background. He was the son of Dominic Brown, who was the fourth Lord Oranmore and Brown.
That's right.
It says here on my notes.
Yeah.
And his mum was Una Guinness, part of the Guinness brewery dynasty.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was this hipster about town who was mates with pop stars, especially members of the Rolling Stones. I think he was mates with Mick Jagger in particular and Marianne Faithfull, and also Paul McCartney. And Paul McCartney has since said that it was thanks to Tara Brown that he got to take his first acid. It was Tara Brown that gave him his first acid at a party in 1966. And if you think about the Beatles and LSD, it was really McCartney that pushed the acid philosophy. All the Beatles took acid, but it was McCartney that really, really publicized it, to the mainstream. The other members of the band talked about it, but they didn't really go overboard like McCartney did. I've got a quote here this is a quote from an article, a press release that came out, or a news report that came out just a few days after the release of Sgt. Pepper's album in 1967, which is festooned with acid, references in the songs and whatever. He says, after I took it, it opened my eyes. We only use 1/10 of our brain. Just think what we could accomplish if we could only tap that hidden part. It would mean a whole new world. If the politicians would take LSD, there wouldn't be any more war or poverty or famine. And there's also that clip, you can find it on YouTube, where he's talking to a ITN news reporter, and the reporter saying to him, look, basically Paul McCartney is defending himself because this reporter has said, why are you promoting LSD?
Paul, how often have you taken LSD?
About 4 times.
And where did you get it from?
Oh, if I was to say where I got it from, it's illegal and everything. It's silly to say that.
Don't you believe that this was a matter which you should have kept private?
But the thing is, that I was asked a question by a newspaper. And the decision was whether to tell a lie or to tell him the truth, I decided to tell him the truth. But I really didn't want to say anything, because if I had my decision, if I had it my way, I wouldn't have told anyone, because I'm not trying to spread the word about this. But the man from the newspaper is the man from the mass medium, I'll keep it a personal thing. If he does too, if he keeps it quiet. But he wanted to spread it, so it's his responsibility, for spreading it, not mine.
But you're a public figure, and you said it in the first place, and you must have known that it would have made the newspapers.
Yes, but to say it, is only to tell the truth. I'm telling the truth, I don't know what everyone's so angry about.
Well, do you think you have now encouraged your fans to take drugs?
I don't think it'll make any difference, I don't think my fans are going to take drugs just because I did, But the thing is, that's not the point anyway, I was asked whether I had or not. And then from then on, the whole bit about how far it's going to go and how many people it's going to encourage is up to the newspapers and up to you, on television. I mean, you're spreading this now at this moment. This is going into all the homes, in Britain. And I'd rather it didn't, But you're asking me the question. You want me to be honest. I'll be honest,
But as a public figure, surely you've got a responsibility to lots and
No,
lots
it's
of
you've
teenagers.
got the responsibility. You've got the responsibility not to spread this now. I'm quite prepared to keep it as a very personal thing, if you will too. If you'll shut up about it, I will.
You've got a huge audience, you've got a young audience, you've got this audience, and you're so influential as a person. Do you think it's right for you to be pushing this drug promoting it. He goes, I'm not promoting it. He says, it's down to you. It's your fault. You don't have to come here and interview me now. Basically, this interview came about because Paul McCartney had a reporter had asked him, have you ever taken LSD? And he said, yes. And at this point, we're told that the media at the time kicked up a stink about it, and they thought, how outrageous that Paul McCartney took LSD and he's
still selling it, aren't they? Yeah,
he's still selling it, exactly. And that's the point he was trying to make. He says, well, this reporter came round to ask him why he'd admitted in that interview, why he'd admitted it. He says, well, it's your responsibility. It's up to you. You asked me a question. I thought I'd be honest and say, yeah, I have. It's down to you whether you tell the public. You could not say anything about this right now and it would all go away.
I don't
but
want
you're
to be
the ones coming
theorist,
here.
but it all sounds a bit staged to me.
Yeah, it sounded a little bit staged. Yeah.
Exactly.
We're all getting to the same point, aren't they?
Yeah, and exactly. And then you've got songs like A Day in the Life. Again, it's got LSD connotations to it. Not only has it got avant-garde connotations, the Beatles have since said, I think John and Paul and George have all or either said that Karl-Heinz Stockhausen and John Cage were an influence on the songs, on particular songs on that album, especially A Day in the Life. But if you listen to A Day in the Life, Paul McCartney has since said that the line "I'd love to turn you on" is a reference to turning yourself on, tune in, tune out of and all of that.
Yeah.
Then you've got the song Magical Mystery Tour. He's since said that the lyric in it, the Magical Mystery Tour, is dying to take you away. It's basically a reference to dying, as in killing your ego, which is what is said you do when you take LSD. What you must do when you take LSD is to kill your ego and to become reborn, to start from scratch. So again, there's references there. And if you listen to the song, in the background, you'll hear kind of like a little backing vocal, and they say the mystery trip. So the song Magical Mystery Tour is a film, which is basically this movie, this Beatles movie, which sees this psychedelic painted bus going around England.
Which even that could be classed as avant-garde, couldn't it?
Yeah, well, it was a very avant-garde film. It was avant-garde. Part of the avant-garde philosophy, if there is one, is to be random. It's so you do things by chance. They call it chance. So the Magical Mystery Tour movie didn't have a script, pretty much. It was just, let's get a bus, get a camera crew, get a load of people like circus freaks, actors, whoever, get them on this bus with the Beatles and just go driving around in England and hope that something happens. So it was unscripted. So that's very avant-garde. And I think George Martin, their producer, actually called it an avant-garde movie, an avant-garde private movie. And that's what it was. And if you look at in the song, if you listen, the Beatles say in it, it's not if you look at the lyrics, it doesn't actually come up, I don't think, but they actually say the mystery trip. So again, you could say that this is, again, a connotation to acid trip, LSD trip. And if you look at the bus, this psychedelic bus, I think McCartney has said that it was loosely based on the Merry Pranksters and their bus. So the Merry Pranksters were these group of people.
The Laurel Canyon guys, weren't they?
Yeah, they were driving around America in 62, 63, 64, around then. So basically before LSD was a street drug, and they had bags of LSD. So at this point in time, this LSD was still pretty much within the confines of the military intelligence complex. It was being used in universities, in hospitals, by psychiatrists, covertly, to experiment on people to see if they could use it for mind control. It was being used in MK Ultra covertly. But somehow this Ken Kesey and the Merry Pranksters, and Ken Kesey is, of course, famous for authoring the book One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
He was also part of an MK Ultra, wasn't he?
He volunteered for it.
Yeah.
He was. He was one of. He was at Stanford, I think, studying at Stanford University. I might be wrong about that, but he says that he was called in to take part in some experiments with LSD, And he later found out, he claims he later found out that they were MK Ultra experiments to see.
You have to question even that, don't you?
Yeah, point? Well, maybe he didn't know, but maybe
I've told that story myself, and then I'm thinking,
yeah. But then again, I think to myself, maybe he didn't know. Maybe they they controlled him. Maybe they controlled him by getting him in there.
Famous book though, and he's also a
he's going around America in a psychedelic painted bus with LSD, which you can't get because it's still within the This is 1964. This is pre-67.
This is pre-everything, isn't it?
Exactly. Where did he get it?
I'm sure he made a bit of brass out of film rights as well.
Yeah. So
Michael Douglas bought, by the way. He owned the film rights.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It was a play, wasn't it? And then
and I think his dad bought them and then gave them to Michael Douglas produced One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
That's right. Yeah. So you've got McCartney who's pushing the LSD more than anybody else, and it was thanks to Tara Brown, you could say. So here we go. Tara Brown was related to the Eliots. And how this happened was Tara Brown was first cousin, 3 times removed, of Henrietta Maria Dillon Lee, who was born in 1807 and died in 1895. We've already mentioned Tara. We've already mentioned Henrietta, haven't we? Henrietta.
Yeah. But the strange thing is, you were doing. I remember doing this research, and you went off and did some other research.
Yeah, I did.
Sort of found 2 different links back. He's actually like a double cousin of.
That's right. I've got here, and Dom, if I've got this wrong, let me know. So Tara Brown was first cousin 3 times removed of Henrietta Maria Dillon Lee. Henrietta's sister, Louisa Ann Rose Dillon, who married and became Louisa Ann Rose Ponsonby Fane. Her daughter Constance Louisa married William Robert Phillips. And they had a daughter, Claire Louisa Phillips, and she married Edward Granville Eliot, parents of Margaret Eliot.
That's correct.
Who became Margaret Asher. And so Tara Brown is Jane and Peter's 3rd cousin, and he's also 3rd cousin of Alistair Ivor Gilbert Boyd, 7th Baron of Kilmarnock, who is related to the Patty Boyd bloodline, which is Patty Boyd as in the ex-George Harrison, Mrs. George Harrison.
So this is how, when me and Matt are doing some research, I'll send Matt some stuff over, like this bit, the first part of that. And then either, if Matt sends me the first bit, I'll run away and do some bit digging on another angle that I spot, and vice versa. And you spotted something when I sent you that, like the Boyd connection, that brings you right back round again to the Beatles.
Because the Boyds, it's probably too big to mention now all in one go, but the Boyds, Patty Boyd, George Harrison's wife at the time, claims that it's because of her that the Beatles got into the Maharishi and meditation and so on. So we've got a Boyd who's introduced George and then the Beatles as a result to meditation. And I think it's safe to say, so she is related to the Eliots. So essentially she is related to the Asher family. So we got another connection to the Ashers in this wheel of death, another element of it. And
Wheel
I think it's safe
cult.
to Wheel of Death cult. And I think it's safe to say that the Beatles were pretty much instrumental in making meditation and so-called Eastern philosophies and mysticism and Eastern religions, what you might call the New Age as well, popular in the West. It was the Beatles that made that happen because of their supremely influential standing in the world, culturally speaking, at the time. They made that happen through their relationship with the Maharishi. And we've got Patty Boyd to thank for that, because she has said it was her that introduced George Harrison to the Maharishi, and it was through George that he then introduced the rest of the Beatles to the Maharishi. And then we can go off into what the Maharishi is alleged to be about, which is this alleged intelligence agent who was put there to be a psyop. A bit like Timothy Leary. Timothy Leary was there to take away young people's focus of major issues that were going on in the world and to get them to look inward through LSD, look at their inner universe. And on the other side of the coin, you've got the drug-free element of that, which is the Maharishi making people look inward and not looking outward. So you've got both sides of the coin, the pro-drug and the anti-drug, both working to do the same thing. And it has been said that the Maharishi was actually pro-Vietnam War.
Yeah,
that has actually been you've got Timothy Leary, who was telling people, there was an interview in 1966 where Timothy Leary was asked, so what do you mean by turn on and tune in and drop out? He says, drop out of protest. So don't go out. So he didn't want young people to go out and burn their draft cards. So effectively he's saying they should just go off and fight. Just don't get engaged in fighting for your right to stay out of a war, basically.
And that's not what people thought. But if you bring in, but if you bring in the whole mind contagion thing, the Ewan Cameron thing, that can basically the words can mean something totally different. You know, it's very interesting, isn't it?
One thing I would like to ask is that you know, I don't think meditation's particularly evil. And,
no,
I don't think
it is.
And also the LSD thing, you can have positive. I've took LSD, but what I mean is, do you think it failed? Do you think it was supposed to be more negative than it was? Because you can have a good trip or a bad trip. I did LSD when I was a kid. I thought it was, you know, but I could also see how it could go horribly wrong as well.
It can go horribly wrong. I think we spoke about this on the second summer of love thing, and I've never taken it. I have to say that I've never taken it, but I've read enough to know what you're supposed to do.
I didn't do
when
loads
you
of
take
it,
a trip.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Officer.
I had a couple of good trips and I had a couple of bad ones, but I do think it cracked my mind open in a positive way. If I'm honest,
and I know people who've taken it. I've been with people who've taken it. I've sat in a room with them when they've taken it.
Positive, but we're not doing the experiment, are we?
Exactly, it's a social experiment, you know.
Yeah.
The thing is, what even Timothy Leary stated this in the book, the psychedelic experience with Ram Dass. When it came out in 1964, he says when you take LSD, you've got to get the setting right. You've got to be in an environment where you're with like-minded people who aren't going to freak you out. They're not when you're taking the trip. You don't want someone sitting there sticking their tongue out and doing stupid noises and trying.
I did it in a nightclub once, and it filled up with water and fish.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing.
That wasn't a pleasant experience.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Sat in the same place for about 8 hours.
It's all about the setting. But if you think about the 60s, for want of a better term, counterculture movement, I dare suggest, or I would guess, that a lot of the people that were taking acid were going to psychedelic club nights or going to parties and maybe even mixing it with a bit of booze, a joint as well. Yeah. And it's not what you're supposed to do.
Not in the correct environment.
And also, Chris, what you're
doing mushrooms and stuff like that.
If these people are eugenicists, they're looking at generational change.
Yeah.
So throwing the pill, throwing all the toxic chemicals that we eat, throwing a few illegal drugs that we think we're rebellious, that gets passed down genetically to our kids.
I would say as an observation, though, the first 60s movement, and then the second Summer of Love. I mean, what a mass experiment!
Oh yeah.
The second one, especially, put everyone in a room with a certain kind of music and beat, like we discussed in the last one, and then give them whatever drug. I mean, when you think about it now, right? When you went to them clubs in the 90s,
goldfish ball, isn't it? It's just
a goldfish ball, and they've even got specific labelled drugs to give to everyone, and no others are getting in, just them ones,
and specific songs that are played at specific times, speed. You know?
I remember the Batmans. There were ones that were called Batmans.
So was around Mitsubishis. There were bloody all kinds of different ones.
Doves, yeah.
But the
Doves,
point is, we never thought for a moment, did we?
No.
Who's manufacturing all this shit? Who's manufacturing? Where, you know, is that getting made in someone's basement?
People thought they were rebels. People thought they were rebels.
Yeah.
But you look at the logos. A lot of them were corporate logos.
Corporate logos. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing with the 60s, you could say it was a social experiment, like you say, Dom. Another reason why they would have been pushing this, because I think it was the book Acid Dreams. I don't know if you guys have
Acid
ever
Dreams,
read
yeah.
It's a really good book, that is. The authors are a bit iffy, but the research in there. I can't remember exactly, but moving away slightly from that, there's another piece of research that I found, and it might have been from having read Acid Dreams, and it was it Jolly West?
Jolly West, yeah.
Jolly West.
Yeah.
He was
He was Jack Ruby's psychologist, had a mental breakdown.
Ah, yes.
So he went to interview him, and he had a total mental breakdown and said, he's not going to be able to appear at your Warren Commission or whatever it was because he's had a complete mental breakdown while I've been interviewing him. He was the guy that said he could basically fry people's brain within...
just by speaking to him.
Didn't he? Was he the one that fed the elephant?
Yeah, LSD,
Yeah.
Well, he appeared in Tom O'Neill's book, the Chaos book. Have you read
Yeah,
Chaos?
that's right. Yeah. That's right.
I mean,
yeah,
he was a thread more or less all the way through that research that he did.
Yeah.
Jolly West.
But
he worked. He worked at that Air Force base where that guy went gaga, and it was Hunter S. Thompson worked there at the same time.
Yes. Yeah,
what? So janitor or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was whatever it was. He was there when I traced back the dates. He worked at the same Air Force base where Jolly West was, and then he went on to be at the Essendon Clinic as well. He was a security guard. Was under S. Thompson at the Essendon Clinic.
That's right. Yeah,
dark
I
character,
remember you saying.
Very dark character. But anyway, sorry.
But this Jolly West. I keep wanting to say Dom Jolly,
but also sorry, Matt. He were also when you think about it, Hunter S. Thompson was avant-garde as well. He was an avant-garde journalist, wasn't he?
Yeah, that's
Gonzo
right.
journalist.
Yeah, another one. But there's this PDF, you can find it online, and it's called The Green Rebellion. And basically, to summarize it as much as I can, basically it was Jolly West. He put together a team of people, and I think it included social workers. I mean, I'm going off my memory. You can find this online. And they basically they rented a flat in the Haight-Ashbury. So this is the epicenter of the Summer of Love in America. This is where it's all going on. The hippie movement in the 67. So they rented a flat in the Haight, and they stayed there for how long, I don't know, a few weeks or a few months. And basically their mission was to watch the hippies. So they just sat in this apartment, and they decked out the apartment like a hippie pad, basically. So that it was a cover, basically. And they were watching the hippies going about their business and how they reacted to LSD. What it did to them, basically, did it change their attitude towards political affiliation? Did it make them vote another way? Did it make them switch? Did it make them go from right to left or left to right? Did it make them pro-war as opposed to being previously anti-war? What did it do with regards to their sex lives? Did it make them more promiscuous? So this is real. This is a reality. You can find this document. It's called The Green Rebellion. A lot of it is really boring, but you can get down to the last few paragraphs. And they were sitting there and studying these people. So in answer to your question, Chris, that's another reason they were doing this. You know,
wouldn't they? That's what you'd do.
That's what you do if you're a eugenicist.
Yeah.
Right. We're coming up. We've done 2 hours already, believe it or not.
Yeah, I believe it.
I knew this were going to go on and on and on, but that's
I do have to apologise, by the way, because
I want to talk about Ivan Vaughan.
Oh God!
Portland
yeah,
Street.
are you sure you only want to do 2 hours?
Yeah. So, I mean, let's just gloss over it for the end of this, but we'll go into more detail next time when we record the next 2 hours.
Yeah, a little taster.
Because,
yeah.
Well, I'll set the scene. Before the Asher family, stroke Eliots, moved to 57 Wimpole Street, they lived in Portland Street.
Great Portland Place.
Great Portland Place, yeah. And that's where George Martin was taught oboe, apparently. According to Peter Asher, he came to their house to be taught oboe.
Yeah, some 15 years before
whatever. This, bear in mind, when he left the military, George Martin, he got paid. He got given sort of like, they used to give him D-Mob money, didn't they, where he went to college to study music. Royal College of Music he went to. Guildhall. And Margaret Asher was the Royal College. Yeah.
Which is only just a stone's throw from Great Portland Street.
Yeah.
Because there's a hotel I used to stay at near there. No, I've got nothing to do with this conspiracy.
So the story is that Peter Asher said was that George Martin had to learn a second instrument for his qualification.
Yeah, that's one of the stories.
Bullshit. Yeah. So he was, but what we do know is that he was definitely taught in private lessons by Margaret Asher.
Yeah.
Which oboe must be a popular thing because Fatboy Slim and Sequoia Starling were taught oboe at the same school, at the same class.
What are they saying though when they talk about playing the oboe?
I don't know what they're saying.
It's a euphemism, isn't it?
Just as a side note of this, I've going through all this research that I've done, and we've talked about this. I got the inkling that old George Martin were a bit of a player, yeah, and he could possibly be either both of them kids' father, because I presume they knew each other before as well. Not just, oh, I need to learn a second instrument, so you're going to teach me to blow, so to speak. And he could possibly be the father.
Well, I think at these points, though, like that fact, you need to follow your instinct.
Yeah. But it's a
this
gut
is
feeling.
where we fall down sometimes. You need to follow your gut.
It's a gut feeling. And it's not, obviously, the ages, and the times sort of match up. Sort of.
George, what year was Margaret Elliot born? George Martin was 1926.
Well, she was a lot older than him. Yeah. Okay. But that doesn't make any difference, does it?
No, it doesn't. No.
He was obviously of age because he'd left the army. So he was obviously of a 21-year-old guy.
He would have been, he would have been.
And she would have been,
20s.
when Peter was born, who was the oldest, I think he was born in 44, I do believe, and Jane was born in 45, or it might have been 43 and 44, whatever. Yeah. But if he was based in London, for instance, and he was into music, there's no reason why he wouldn't know who Margaret Asher was.
Well, he was a bit of a lad, really, because he was married to a lady called Sheena, and whilst he was seeing Sheena, he started an affair with his secretary, or one of the secretaries at EMI Parlophone,
right.
What is now Abbey Road Studios, basically, what was then called EMI Studios. It only became called Abbey Road Studios, A, because it's situated on Abbey Road, and B, because the Beatles made it famous through the album they released called Abbey Road. So after a few years after their split, they renamed the studio Abbey Road because they thought that'd be a good way of making more money from the place.
Right.
Gave it a bit of cachet. But so while he was married to Sheena, I think that was her name, and Sheena is the mum of is it Gregory Paul Martin, the guy who did the audio book for the memoirs book?
It was.
That's
from his first marriage. That's from George Martin's first marriage.
Yeah, well, it's just continuation, isn't it, of all the same.
It's just weird, isn't it?
Didn't he didn't know anything about what the book was about. He just went in.
He said he's an actor, which he is, but he said, I was an actor. And I just took on the job, and I didn't think about it. It's an acting job. But he since said, I think it was last year, wasn't it? He was interviewed by someone, I can't remember who it was, and he actually said to the guy, "Do you know what? I've actually come around to the idea that Paul is dead."
But just by him doing that, though, he's almost admitting that book is legit.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't tell me he didn't read that book and realise what he was reading.
He's reading it.
Without even reading it, in fact, just the premise of what that book is.
Yeah.
But he's legitimising that book, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So, that was he was from George Martin's first marriage to Sheena, and he began an affair with this woman called Judy Lockhart Smith, who was a secretary at EMI. Not sure if she was his secretary or she might have been the secretary of the manager of Parlophone, where George Martin was the assistant manager of the label that the Beatles got signed to eventually. And the story of the Beatles has always been, up until about 5 or so years ago, since day dot, has been, the Beatles went to EMI. They had an audition in 1962, and George Martin said, "Oh, they're quite good, but you know what? They lack something. But I like them. I'm charmed by them. I like their attitude. I like their personality. So I thought I'd give them a go.
Yeah.
It only came to light about 5 or so years ago, thanks to Mark Lewison, who is regarded as the top man when it comes to Beatles history, because he goes through all the documents and the papers and the records. He's like, studious guy. He said, well, actually, that's not what happened, because he found a letter or something. I can't remember now what the exact details are, but he was effectively blackmailed into signing the Beatles, because at the time, his manager, the manager of Parlophone, his boss, said to him, he was very much against this kind of, what
his affair.
His affair, basically. And he said, either you sign the Beatles, or I'm going to just sack you or blow this thing out of the water. Your missus is going to find out about this, basically. So he was basically he was blackmailed, basically, into signing the Beatles and recording them. So he is a bit of a player. And I've got some information here about his wife, because what happened was, and this sort of sends out the red flags as well, if I can find it. I put it down as a side note. Here we go. This is according to one of his biographies. Shortly after his marriage to Sheena, she was plagued by a spate of maladies, including nervous dyspepsia and agoraphobia. So she basically went a bit
gaga.
Bit gaga after marrying him. So I don't know if that's got something to do with the affair, but he left her in the end. He left her in the end.
But
and
I mean,
he married Judy Lockhart Smith, and they had more children. And there's been scandal recently because when he died, when he passed away, the kids from the earlier marriage didn't get anything. They didn't get anything. The other kids from the second marriage. And now Giles Martin, who is George from the second marriage, he's become the de facto Beatles producer. So anytime there's a new box set that's coming out with remastering and all of that jazz, Giles Martin is now all that avant-garde jazz. Yeah, Giles Martin is the producer. So it's like, what are the odds of that? You know, what are the odds that George Martin would pass away and then the next official Beatles producer would be his son?
Yeah.
Do you know,
it's like they're keeping it in house. It's got the secrets have got to keep the,
Yeah.
But the strange, well, it's not strange because it's a conspiracy at the end of the day. But why would George Martin mention that in any interviews, right, that you see that how much he actually knew the Ashers before managing Paul McCartney? Why, if you've got nothing to, a bit like the bloodline stuff, why wouldn't you say that Tom Hanks was the cousin of Walt Disney or the grandson of Walt Disney or whatever it was, right? If there's nothing, if you're not hiding anything, because surely, even if they said, "Oh, what a coincidence," you know, I knew Margaret Asher and Richard Asher for 20 years. But you said that, was it Mike or you that said? I think it was Mike Williams. He said that he pushed George Martin actually liked the fact that Paul was going out with Jane. He actually encouraged it.
Yeah, I think that was Mike. Yeah, that was Mike.
He said he actually openly encouraged them to, which even Mike said
that makes more sense, though.
It does make sense.
If you think about it, I think even Paul McCartney has said in his officially sanctioned biography, Many Years From Now, which came out in 1997 and was written by his mate Barry Miles, the earlier mentioned Barry Miles.
Is that what it's called? Many Years From Now?
Many Years From Now. It's a good book, actually, if you want to look at. He talks about his time in London in the avant-garde. Like, basically, he was
the title ties into what Mike talks about.
He probably took it from that, maybe. Yeah, it's from 97. I think the book came out in 97. And in that book, I might be remembering it wrong because, you know, as we said before we recorded this, or maybe after we pressed record, you know, you take in so much research, you sometimes don't remember if it's you that found this research or whether it was one of you guys and I heard it from you or from Mike Williams or from Mark Devlin or from whoever. But I seem to recall that Paul McCartney is quoted as saying that when he entered the Wimpole Street home of the Ashers, he was entering this kind of different world because he came from a kind of lower middle class background. He grew up in a council estate. So he was in this new world now. He'd found fame with the Beatles. He was living with the Ashers in this posh house in the middle of London with these urbane, cultured people, you know, with this bloodline, this elite, so-called elite bloodline. And he says he was open to this new form of culture. So they were introducing him to classical music and all of this kind of stuff and the avant-garde. So you had the Ashers doing that. And at the same time, what a lot of people might not know is that George Martin, long before the Beatles in 1966 and 67 were recording with tape loops and were using electronic sound, avant-garde, quote unquote, instrumentation to make their music more weird and cosmic sounding, more avant-garde, years before, even before he signed the Beatles, even back in the days when the Beatles were still in Liverpool playing rock and roll covers and R&B covers, George Martin was playing around with electronic instruments and the avant-garde. He actually recorded
it's a long way from the oboe.
It's a long way from the oboe. He recorded a song called Time Beat. You can find this on YouTube, and he recorded it under the name of Ray Cathode, and it's electronic.
Cathode Ray. Yeah.
And he actually said, there you go. He actually said, the Beatles, the avant-garde, here they are, 1966, 67, recording all this avant-garde sounding stuff. I was into the avant-garde, 10 years before they were. Again, I'm paraphrasing, but that's pretty much what he said. And you've got to take into account electronic instruments in the early 60s, 1961 would have been a bugger to find. This is, the synthesizers didn't get used properly.
Unless you're working for a military operation.
Yeah, exactly. And that takes us off into a completely different strand.
We'll leave that for now.
Yeah. So basically what I'm saying is, you've got, on one side, you've got the Ashers feeding Paul McCartney with the classical side of it, turning him on. So, he records the song Yesterday with a string quartet, which was, quite different for the Beatles. Here they used to be an R&B rock and roll covers band, and now here they're doing string quartets. And then on the other side, you've got George Martin coming at them with his avant-gardism, using tape loops and electronic instruments and sound effects long before, when the Beatles were still wet behind their ears. So you've got all of that coming at McCartney. So when you think of the fact that Margaret Elliott and George knew each other 15 or so years before, you do have to wonder whether this was preordained for some purpose in later life or later on down the road to push the avant-gardism onto what would become the Beatles being the flag wave bearers of the 60s underground movement, because they were. I mean, the Beatles were the biggest band on earth, and in some ways they still are. And they had huge, massive influence, and it was a unique kind of influence because unlike other pop bands of the time or rock bands of the time, their influence scanned the generational divide. It wasn't just teenage girls or students or young people.
That was the start of it, though, wasn't it? Everybody, well, not everybody.
It was grannies, aunties, toddlers.
If you think about David Beckham now, where he wears a sarong and then people are wearing a sarong, or he has a tattoo and everyone's having they were really the first people to do that, weren't they? From a band.
Yeah, as a band, yeah, definitely.
And the first ones to do that model of, we're kind of home friendly and then we're going to drugs.
Yeah.
Miley Cyrus's, I'm a nice little girl now, I'm turning into a satanic witch whore.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, exactly.
It's the same model, isn't it? It's the same model.
Exactly.
And now you see it so blatantly in every musician, don't you?
Yeah.
They start off like this and then they go into this.
They started off as the cute, cuddly mop tops with their suits, singing about "She Loves You" and "I Want to Hold Your Hand," and then by 3 years later,
and it's a very small time. When you were talking earlier about, when you think of time now between now and 2020 or 9/11, the time of that thing happening was very short, wasn't it? It was really rapido.
And if you look at old newspaper reports from the time, old newspaper clippings, there were some people who were picking up on this. In 1967, after the Beatles had stopped touring in August 66, they kind of disappeared for a while. And this is where the Paul is dead thing comes into. Right. There's a lot of people who say, where did Paul and all the Beatles, why did they disappear after August 66 and they didn't reappear again?
Well, I mean, it was a bit of a bunch of excuses. Like, we couldn't hear herself playing or...
Yeah. They
even I heard that one.
Playing, yeah.
They did the first original stadium concert.
Yeah, they did Shea Stadium.
So they're the biggest band. Are you telling me they couldn't afford the best sound available? All right, do one and it's crap. That's never happening again, guys. We're getting best equipment next time.
Yeah.
Right?
No, Paul's back. We need him to play on the roof.
Yeah,
I know,
a bit taller.
I don't know how they got that equipment.
Before we head off into oblivion, right?
Let me hang on. Just before we go, Fatty, I want to say
we're not going.
All right,
we're not going just yet. Right, we still haven't answered the question that we started on. One thing about Wimpole Street that fascinates me is if you go to Wimpole Street now, right, and look at the houses on there, them houses are worth, I'd say, tens of millions, right?
Yeah.
It's said that they bought that house. When I've read, they bought the house on Wimpole Street. Even back in the 60s, that house would have been valuable. Even on,
it'd have been different though, Fatty, compared to now, wouldn't it?
No, I'm not saying it'd be worth tens of millions, but it would have still been.
It would have been,
London,
in relative, it would have been prestige.
London, it would. But
it'd be interesting to find out if there's some way of finding out.
Yeah, but anyway, they moved from Portland Street in 1957. That number keeps popping up for some reason. But anyway,
and that was a flat. That was an apartment.
That was an apartment to that house. Yeah. Now, I'll let you tell the story of I said Portland Street. Ivan Vaughan.
Ivan Vaughan. Yeah, I just wanted to finish off the last bit. But even back
Here we
in
go for
those
another
days,
hour.
basically, if you look at old newspaper clippings, people have. In 1967, when the Beatles came back after this long break, and they came back with moustaches and slightly longer hair and psychedelic music, whereas before it was all pop music. There were people who were saying in the press, the Beatles have gone weird. What's happened? The Beatles have gone a bit weird. So people were noticing this at the time. They were noticing it at the time.
But then they are the leaders of the avant-garde thing, so they've come up with a new identity, haven't they?
Yeah, exactly. They were the biggest band in the world. So when they championed the 60s hippie movement, if you want to call it that, everyone went along with them, you know. And I would argue that if it wasn't for the Beatles, the American side of it wouldn't have been as popular, because they needed the Beatles. They needed something mainstream like the Beatles to carry it for them, to make it as big as it became, because they crossed all the generational divides.
Because they went over to America, got the young kids.
Yeah.
Then they carried them into the drug culture.
And carried them into the
and did the first stadium concert that had never been done before.
And pop videos as well. They were doing music videos as well, in 1965, 66. Yeah. But yeah, Ivan Vaughan. Okay, this. Are you sure we've only got a few minutes left? Oh my God.
I never said a few minutes. Let's do it.
All right.
I've got 16 minutes because I've ordered a curry.
Okay. I thought we did a curry now. Or a coffee at least. So Ivan Vaughan. So basically the story is, according to the official story, Ivan Vaughan was this guy. He was Paul McCartney's school friend. He also went to school, I think, with George Harrison. They all went to the same school. And he is the guy that is responsible for introducing the teenage Paul McCartney to John Lennon at a village fete in 1957, July 1957.
57 again.
Yeah, 57 again. I knew you were going to say that. So Paul was 15 at the time. John was 16, 17. And John was playing in his local group at the time, the Quarrymen. So we got Masonic references there. Okay, so we're told it was named after his school, Quarrybank Grammar School. Yeah. So Ivan is going to school with Paul McCartney. They're the same age. Actually, they were born on the same day, same year, same day.
Why not?
Why not? Just throw that in there.
Oh, no, just throw that in there. Yeah, just throw that in there. So he was going to school with Paul McCartney, and he knew John Lennon. He was mates with him, but they didn't go to the same school. So Ivan decided, hey, Paul's is really into his music. I want to introduce him to John. So he's the guy he is said to be the guy that's responsible for making them meet and shake hands and become mates. So effectively, a few weeks after meeting, Paul joins the
I'd love to see that handshake.
Yeah. Well, there's some other Beatles handshakes you can see online.
Yeah.
I think you know the one I mean.
Yeah.
And so the Quarrymen, Paul brings George Harrison in, and eventually it becomes the Beatles. So another point of interest, also going to, this was the Liverpool Institute School. So it was Ivan, Paul, George Harrison. Also attending the Liverpool Institute was Neil Aspinall, who became their roadie, their road manager. And when the Beatles stopped touring in 66, after that, he went on to work at their company, Apple. And he actually went on to become the director of it. I think the CEO of Apple, up until he passed away in the 2000s. So he was like one of the inner circle of the Beatles, but he knew them from back then. So he was another kind of school friend of that collective, if you like. Someone else who went to school at the same time was Peter Sissons, the newsreader.
Yeah, newsreader.
Yeah, he was at school at the same time, same school. So fast forward a few years. Ivan goes to university. He goes to London, and again, this is thanks to Mark Lewison. He found this out. He is a mainstream author, but he's come up with some real gems. He puts it down to coincidence.
He's not looking at the angles, or is it like we?
No, he's not looking. He's certainly not. He's certainly not. So fast forward a few years. Ivan goes to university. He's in London. He's studying in London, and Paul decides to go and visit his mate. This is October 62, and he goes for a weekend. And this is just before the Beatles are about to record their first single, because it's the month that their first single, Love Me Do, comes out. So he's on the cusp of fame, basically, but this is pre-fame era. So he goes to see Ivan at his flat in London. And I'll read you how Mark Lewison has written it. He says, Ivan lived, here we go, in flat 6, Seaford Court, 220 to 222, Great Portland Street. It was, as always, a fantastically connected world. Paul McCartney could have spent the night at any one of several million London addresses, but was in the building where George Martin had received oboe lessons from Margaret Asher 15 years earlier. She and Dr. Richard Asher was living in flat 2 at Seaford Court throughout the time they had their children, Peter, Jane and Claire, who grew up there before they moved to 57 Wimpole Street in 1957, 57 again. And another link, again from his book, Ivan in London was mixing with the likes of Peter Cook, Dudley Moore and Lenny Bruce. And that's because Vaughan was doorman at the Establishment Club in Soho, London, earning himself a few late night pounds while reading classics at University College in London. So here's the thing, what Mark Lewison doesn't mention was the Establishment was a comedy club. I think one of the first ever comedy clubs in London, and it was run by Peter Cook. Peter Cook was part of the comedy collective, which was Beyond the Fringe. So it was Peter Cook, Alan Bennett, Dudley Moore, and it was Jonathan Miller. Jonathan Miller, they all studied at Oxbridge. They were Oxbridge. They were either Oxford University, Cambridge University, as you, well, no surprises there.
They're all funny who go to Oxford.
Yeah, that's it. It's just one of those things, as usual. Yeah. Just on a side note, Peter Cook almost joined the Foreign Office. He went for a job at the Foreign Office, but decided
Comedian, Foreign Office.
Yeah. You know, which one shall I go for?
Which way shall I go?
We'll tell you, Peter.
You're going that way, Peter.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a side note. But Jonathan Miller, I think he was at Cambridge. He studied to be a doctor and he actually became a registrar. So he got his qualifications and he was studying, or he was a registrar. And this is according to Jane Asher. He was a registrar working in a hospital under the tutelage of none other than Dr. Richard Asher.
There we go, full circle.
Full circle. Yeah. And I could go on to mention William Sargent and all of
There are so many coincidences. There's a pile of coincidences, hours of coincidental research that fall into place that I mean, is this happened by chance? No, I can't believe it does. I can see it happening. Is it the matrix coding that draws all these individuals together at a certain point because that's the way it's been coded into the game, if you like?
I don't know.
Or is it organized to a level that we can't even envisage? Because unraveling all this stuff takes us hours to do, and somebody sat around a table saying, right, you've got to meet Tara Brown, you've got to meet Bertrand Russell in 5 years' time. In 5 years' time, and in 2 years' time, that's going to happen. And that is mind-boggling.
And it's even more mind-boggling because Jonathan Miller's father was a psychiatrist, Dr. Emmanuel Miller, who was a pioneer in child psychology, apparently, just after or around World War II.
I like when they say pioneers.
Yeah,
the pioneering child psychology.
Pioneering, yeah.
So, it means experimenting on children.
Yeah, basically. And he was Tavistock supported.
That is full circle.
It's full
I don't know how many full circles we're going to go in. We might have to change the wheel of Beatles death cult to the full circle of death. I don't. All them spokes now. I've got the Masonic circle, and that's another link as well because. What I found in the research that first presentation we did on Mike's was that all these families have their own lodges. The Eliot Lodge in Cornwall.
Yeah, that's what you found. Yeah.
The Westmoreland Freemasons. That's where the Ponsonby and all them other people that we just spoke about. All of these people all had their own lodges, not just or a Mason. They actually had their own lodge named after them.
And do you want me to mention the allegation that links together William Sargent and Dr. Richard Asher and
quickly, We'll finish on that note because it's a good note.
Finish on that. Okay.
Next time I want to go into the Asher stuff and Sargent and all the like Mayhew and what have you. What were happening around that period of time? Is it Charles Mayhew won it? Is it Charles Mayhew?
I think
the guy that did the panorama experiment.
Oh yeah, the one you can find a bit of that online.
Dr.
as well,
Osmond, wasn't it? Dr. Osmond,
Oh,
what they
of
call
course,
it?
Humphrey Osmond. Yeah, he was the man
Osmond,
that came up with the word psychedelic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, who's mates with Huxley. So Dr. Richard Asher. So he's this.
We haven't even spoke about Richard Asher yet.
No, we haven't. We haven't.
But anyway,
no, we
we
haven't.
will do
So
next
yeah,
time.
he was a general practitioner who specialised in hypnosis as well, and he wrote a paper about it.
Yeah.
So I've got this allegation here, and this is from the Beatles conspiracy site. And I think it's also on a blog called Wimpole Muse.
That's right, yeah.
USE. And this is from somebody who doesn't give out their name. And basically they're linking together Jonathan Miller's dad, Dr. Emmanuel Miller, with Dr. Richard Asher and William Sargent, who we mentioned earlier, this British doctor who wiped a lot of people's memories in a national health hospital during the 50s, 60s and 70s.
No, he's a pioneer. He's a pioneer.
He was a pioneer. He was a pioneer in wiping people's memories. You know, people coming out of hospital saying they had to learn to read and write again because he'd taken that away from them. What an evil bastard! You know, that's putting it mildly. So yeah, this is what this allegation is. Asher, Miller, Sargent, all three were top psychiatrists. I worked with them all. I began helping med professors train nurses, doctors at 12 years old. There were many kids, not just me, but I only met 2 others. They decided I was suitable and flexible and asked me to help with research, some illegal stuff, but they needed to explore even these areas. Basically, they were into learning how the brain worked, but they were into other things too. Most of the time, I didn't know what they were getting up to. It was all mixed up and above my head, but they fed me well. They got into drugs as they knew it was becoming a problem. The police wanted to train cops to deal with it, how to work out what drugs they were on, etc. They supplied the drugs and were observing the tests most of the time. Sargent was different from the others. He was an outsider. The others didn't let him in on all they were up to, but they needed his input at times. They never spoke of it to me, but all did work for the government at times. What I do know is it's not necessary to hurt or drug people to brainwash them. Sargent had to, as he wasn't blessed with the psychic abilities that Asher and Miller possessed. All were able to read minds, telepathy, deep hypnosis. Not kidding, mate, for they were using this on me to get deep into my mind to understand how it all worked. Strangely, they all could do it, but nobody knew how it worked. It was passed down by word of mouth over the centuries to those who exhibited a talent for it. Sargent wasn't so blessed. He could do hypnosis, but only level 1, the one we all know about.
Fucking hell. Which ties into that theory that, the satanic blood groups have the psychic powers and they can pass them down to it's generational, basically.
You've also got MK Ultra, weren't they doing like parapsychology and remote viewing and
it sounds to me like MK Ultra is like basically scientificizing satanic mind control. It sounds like that's what's existed forever, and they've just made it into
it goes back to the ancients, maybe.
Scientific operation.
Yeah.
Again, I'm saying that I sound fucking insane saying it, don't I? But that's what it seems like, doesn't it?
Sadly, you don't sound insane saying it anymore.
No, you
that's
don't.
even more worrying.
No, but when you say it out loud, you think, what am I actually saying here?
No, it makes sense to me.
But it does make sense, doesn't it? That's the logic, isn't it? When you listen to these SRI survivors.
You just reminded me, actually, there's a book that William Sargent wrote, and it's called Battle for the Mind.
That's correct,
and it's the history of mind control. Actually, in the final chapters, I think it came out in 1957.
Yeah, it did come in 57,
I think it's in the last chapters he tells you how police forces and armies use brainwashing in in the modern time, so 1950s. But in the first, I think it's the first chapter or the second chapter, he actually talks about mind control in the days of the ancients.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
and this is coming from him. So
I think we should pick that up, Matt, and do more detail on that, because I mean, the things that Asher was around at that particular point, i.e., writing the Mental Health Act, working with Sargent possibly, but certainly a lot of the psychiatrists that were under Sargent he was working with. The fact that the Olsen guy that flew out the window was working with Sargent and coming over here working on and off for several years as well. This was part of a massive operation. You've got the Beatles right in the middle of all of this operation at Wimpole Street, or Paul McCartney.
Also, when you listen to these SRA survivors, they often say that it's not as crazy as we think. It's literally logically done, and it happens.
Yeah, to us it seems mad, but to them, because we don't think like that, do we?
Yeah, they do this, and this, and then you're done. You know.
And that's part of the trick, because if people think it's mad, then it's very difficult to convince people that what you're saying to them, no, it did happen. Oh, shut up. That's ridiculous. That
but imagine that these operations have spent years perfecting this.
Well, like we're saying, fact, maybe hundreds and thousands of years.
Yeah.
It's only been scientificized, if that's a word, over the last 50 or 60 years.
Yeah.
The Nazis were up to it, you know.
Is that when they started to make it into a science rather than just a,
something they could rinse and repeat constantly
and use to their advantage?
Yes.
Not just
I just found a quote from William Sargent from The Mind Possessed. This is what he says: from the Stone Age to Hitler, the Beatles, and the modern pop culture, the brain of man has been constantly swayed by the same physiological techniques. Reason is dethroned, the normal brain computer is temporarily put out of action, and new ideas and beliefs are uncritically accepted. The mechanism is so powerful that while conducting this research into possession, trance, and faith healing in various parts of the world, I myself was sometimes affected by the techniques I was observing, even though I was on my guard against them. A knowledge of the mechanism at work may be no safeguard once emotion is aroused and the brain begins to function abnormally. And that's from him talking about the Beatles and mind control and pop music. And
there's a picture in that of a girl going mad. And
Beatles fans screaming.
Beatle possessed. They knew how they were going to possess people, but
and then you think of modern day with Netflix and TV and the way films are,
social media
and music and everything now. We're probably at the pinnacle now.
Mind control. Yeah.
You talk about screaming fans. That's one of the mysteries. And I've asked people who were around at the time why they screamed. You know, why did you go to a Beatles concert and scream?
And pass out.
And they would wetting themselves, wetting the seats. You know, that's what John Lennon said. He said they would. These girls would wet the seats. And a few of them said, or one or two, to be honest, to be fair, said to me, well, I went into the concert with knowing that girls screamed, and I said, there's no way I'm going to scream. But as soon as I sat down and watched them, I couldn't stop myself from screaming. It was like something took me over and made me scream, and I can't explain it to you. I don't know what it was, but I just couldn't. And I just wonder whether they were using sound frequencies.
Yeah, Travis Scott, it sounds like that thing that happened at that concert, Chris, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's something from again back to George Martin
stage kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe they were using this in the 60s. There's an interview that Paul McCartney gave, again, whether it's him or not, just to add that in as a
I think we're beyond that now. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. All right. Just take it as read now. Okay. So it's a documentary. You might find it online. It's called Produced by George Martin, and it's really weird because it's basically a documentary about George Martin, about his life and his career, right? But it's basically about his music career. So how he got into producing, the bands he produced. So obviously the Beatles are featured. And for some weird reason, and it just has no relevance at all to the documentary, right in the middle of it, you've got Paul McCartney sitting with George Martin talking about the old days, you know, what a great time we had in the studio. And he goes and he looks at George Martin. He says, "Hey, George, do you remember you used to tell us those old stories, those old tales?" And he's going, "What do you mean? Sort of, you know, about the old days in World War II." And then Paul McCartney's looking at George. He goes, "Do you remember that story you told us about the days Hitler, when he used to go on stage to speak to his people, and before he would go on and stand at the rostrum, his officials would have this sound frequency, and they would turn it up so high." Or low, either way, they would turn it up to one end of the spectrum, so it would actually be unsettling to the crowd. So you had these thousands of people who've turned up for this rally, and they can't hear it, but they can feel it. They're actually feeling physically sick. This is the way McCartney is describing it to George Martin. Because you
Why
remember
is he
when you
talk-
told
why
us
is he
about
even talking about that?
exactly.
No,
exactly.
I
Why?
have heard that. I have heard that they used frequencies at Hitler's.
Oh yeah,
thing.
and
Yeah,
but
but why is it in this
story?
documentary?
Yeah,
and
I've
why is
heard
George
that story.
Martin?
Yeah.
He goes, "Hey George, do you remember when you were telling us the Beatles when we were younger about this in the studio during a break during recording?" I'm paraphrasing, of course.
See, from my point of view, you might as well just say, "But we used to do that, make everyone piss themselves."
Yeah, exactly. So he's saying, they turn it up up at one end of the spectrum, the frequency, and everyone would feel ill. And as soon as Hitler goes onto the stage and takes to the rostrum, they would turn it the other way, so it would go right down to the other side, and all of a sudden everyone felt
basically a mood
elated
change.
because that
mood
tenseness
changing device.
so it would make them cheer and scream and clap and greet him with applause. And why is this being mentioned? And Paul McCartney says, "I used to love I used to love it when you used to tell us those stories, George." But why is he telling them that?
Yeah, and saying those stories,
I mean, so we've got ex-military George working for military EMI.
Military history of EMI. Yeah,
I sent you a video actually, Dom, talking about that the other day. I don't know if you watched it or not. And it was, I forget.
I saw it. In Serbia. Yeah,
was it 6 months ago in Serbia?
Yeah.
I think it was about.
Where the crowd started going mad.
They were having a riot, Matt.
No, they weren't having a riot. They were having a march, a peaceful march.
Sorry, a peaceful protest. Then all of a sudden, and it was massive. There was loads of them. And again, it wasn't even in our news, really, was it? But then all of a sudden, the whole crowd just parted like that. And they said that it sounded like a herd was running up behind them. Like, whoa. So this crowd, just all peacefully stood there, just went like that, and all ran to the sides.
We were on Sky that as well,
screaming.
Sky News.
Was it? Yeah, it was on Sky News. But I'd never heard that story before, Fat.
No, I didn't either. No.
So it was
but
on
I don't
Sky
watch
News.
the news, so I don't watch TV.
But what I mean is, it never even came into any feed I had or anything.
No.
And even the Serbians were saying they tested some kind of sound weapon on us, and it turned out that they actually had they tracked down the sound weapon. It looked like a box like that, and then they found it strapped to the front of a Jeep in Serbia, and they even tracked down that they paid X amount of money for it, etc., etc.
Wow, it's mental, isn't it?
Did you see that one, Fight? Did you see the bit with it?
Yeah.
I've seen another video from years back, and I think it was China, where they were controlling a crowd of protesters or something, and they used the frequency and made them all docile, I think.
Right.
But I've just remembered something else on the Sgt. Pepper album when it came out on vinyl. At the end, when it comes to the run-out groove, when you've got the last song and then it goes to the end and the needle just keeps going round and round and round. Well, on one of the sides they put a tape loop in there and it sounds like sort of noise, and it's basically bits and pieces stuck together to make this strange noise to freak you out. But apparently something else they put on there, I don't know if this works because I don't have a dog, but they put a sound frequency on there that only dogs can hear.
Right.
On the run out groove, apparently. So what other things did they put on? Do you
Yeah,
know what I mean?
yeah.
What else are
they're
they
admitting
capable
to.
of putting on there?
Yeah.
But I mean, that is fascinating because I had heard the Hitler one, but I'd not heard Paul McCartney.
George Martin.
And, is that on video? That
I've got a sound clip of it. Yeah.
We'll put that on here. We'll put that on here.
I found it. Yeah, I did find the.
We'll have to put that on here.
The documentary, but it keeps getting taken down. Funnily enough.
Yeah.
You do an experiment in the studio and take an oscillator. So you go, can you hear it? And us with young ears at the time, we go, yeah, can still hear it. And you take it up, and then we go, no, we just lost it. And you say, pretty good hearing. You just went up to decibels. And they said, now let's do it the other way. You go, take it down. And we go, yeah, can hear it. Ooh, got a funny feeling though. You take it down low. And you told the story that Hitler's people, his media people, knew this effect. And before a rally, they would play a low frequency that nobody could hear. They'd put that out, and everybody'd be sitting there going, I'm not feeling too great. And the minute before Hitler got there, they'd switch it off, and everyone would go, yeah! and loving all of it. I love those little stories that would be mixed in with our sort of recording career.
of the ocean.